A billionaire sought revenge by planning to marry his maid. He never imagined the secret he would discover. Hello, viewer. Thanks for joining us. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments, along with the city you're watching from. Now let's continue with the story. Olivia Wilson stood at the far end of the grand dining room in the Sterling mansion, carefully adjusting the final piece of silverware on a table set for 20. It was early evening, and the lights within the crystal chandeliers cast a warm, golden glow across the polished floors. For someone who had been working in this household for nearly 5 years, Olivia still felt a flutter of self-consciousness whenever she looked at her reflection in the immaculate surfaces. At 30 years old, she had grown skilled in appearing calm, despite the storm of uncertainty often whirling inside her. On most nights, her tasks ended once the table was set. However, everything changed the moment Marcus Sterling walked in. The 42-year-old mogul had just returned from a flight to New York, and he strode into the dining room with an air of barely contained fury. Dressed in a tailored charcoal suit, his tie slightly loosened, he tossed a leather briefcase onto the sideboard with more force than necessary. Olivia paused, startled. She took in his tense posture and the lines of fatigue around his eyes. "Good evening, Mr. Sterling," she offered, her voice gentle. Despite his wealth and power, or perhaps because of it, Marcus wore his anger like an ever-present cloak. Yet behind his controlled composure, Olivia always sensed a deeper wound, something festering beneath his relentless drive. He spared her only a brief glance before pouring himself a glass of water from the pitcher on the table. "Olivia, ensure everything is perfect for dinner. I'm expecting guests later," he said curtly, turning away without a word of gratitude or acknowledgement of her long day. She bowed her head, the obedient gesture ingrained after years of working for elite families. "Yes, Mr. Sterling." With that, Marcus disappeared into his study, leaving only the echo of his footsteps and the hum of tension in the air. Alone again, Olivia double-checked the arrangement of the plates and utensils. Behind her, Harriet Woodward, the 55-year-old head housekeeper, entered. Harriet's usually brisk demeanor softened when she saw Olivia's troubled expression. "Marcus has been in a mood since yesterday," Harriet explained quietly, careful not to let her words carry beyond the room. "Some issue with investors, I hear. Don't take it personally." Olivia nodded, though the knot in her stomach persisted. She was used to Marcus's simmering temperament, but there was something sharper about him tonight. Deciding it was none of her business, she excused herself to finish other tasks, yet curiosity nagged her. After all, it was impossible to ignore the undercurrent of hostility that often punctuated the luxury and calm of the mansion. Later that evening, once Marcus disappeared upstairs for a call, Olivia slipped into the mansion's expansive library. High shelves crammed with first editions rose up to the ceiling, and the faint scent of leather and old paper always brought her a sense of comfort. She had come here countless times to dust and organize, but tonight her eyes were drawn to a particular drawer in a mahogany desk. She knew it contained files related to the Sterling family's history, old financial records, letters, and her employer's private documents. A flicker of guilt crossed her mind. Harriet would scold her if she caught Olivia snooping, but Olivia told herself she wasn't searching out of mere curiosity. There was a hollow place inside her that yearned for answers about her own past. She inched the drawer open. Papers rustled softly under her fingertips. One file bore a faded label, "Richard Sterling, Bankruptcy and Legal Documents." She caught the name of Jason Wickfield, scrawled hastily in the corner, and her pulse quickened. She had heard rumors around the house that Jason Wickfield was the man believed to have ruined Richard Sterling years ago, plunging the Sterling family into crisis. The story went that Marcus had sworn vengeance on Wickfield and his entire lineage. A soft sound from the corridor made her freeze. Heart pounding, she gently slid the file back, shutting the drawer. She rose just as Harriet stepped into the library. The housekeeper's worried gaze took in the scene, but she said nothing, merely gesturing that Olivia should leave before Marcus returned. That night, lying in her modest bedroom on the mansion's second floor, Olivia found no peace. She stared at the ceiling, replaying Marcus's cold demeanor and the hints within those documents. Was there some tie between her own murky origins and the tense world of the Sterlings? She recalled her childhood in different foster homes, the unanswered questions about her biological parents. Though she had never met a Jason Wickfield, the name struck a chord she couldn't explain. By midnight, the opulent mansion was silent. In her small, tidy room, Olivia resolved to tread more carefully. She understood that her place here was precarious, and any misstep could cost her the fragile stability she'd built. Yet the mere glimpse of Jason Wickfield's name on those pages had ignited a spark of determination within her, a desire not only to protect herself, but also to discover what truly lay behind the Sterling Empire's guarded doors. 2 mornings later, Olivia stood in the foyer, polishing the gleaming marble floor as the bright California sun streamed in through the massive windows. Despite the routine nature of her tasks, her thoughts were still tangled in what she had glimpsed in the library. The mention of Jason Wickfield lingered like an unspoken question. A sudden knock at the front door drew her attention. Before Olivia could answer it, Marcus Sterling strode in from an adjacent hallway. He shot her a sharp glance, silently commanding her to remain where she was. With a guarded expression, Marcus opened the door. A uniformed courier extended a sealed envelope. "Urgent delivery for Mr. Sterling," he announced. Marcus signed quickly and dismissed the courier. Without a word to Olivia, he tore open the envelope. She couldn't help noticing his jaw tighten as he scanned the page. A flicker of something, could it be triumph or anger, crossed his face. He turned and, with swift steps, disappeared into his study. Olivia listened as he slammed the door behind him. Harriet, who had been dusting nearby, raised her eyebrows in concern. "He's rarely that abrupt, even with couriers," she murmured. "I wonder what was in that letter." Before Olivia could respond, Harriet set aside her feather duster and hurried down the hall, presumably to check if Marcus needed anything. Olivia forced herself to resume her chore, though her mind buzzed with questions. It wouldn't do to pry openly. The Sterlings paid well, and she had no intention of losing this job. Still, a small voice inside her insisted that something monumental was brewing. Around midday, as she was arranging freshly laundered sheets in the linen closet, Olivia heard her name echo through the corridor. Marcus's voice was sharp. "Olivia, come here at once." Steeling herself, she set down the linens and made her way to his study. She found him standing behind a massive oak desk, the letter from earlier lying nearby. A half-finished glass of whiskey rested to one side, indicating a level of stress he rarely displayed. "Close the door," he ordered. She obeyed, her heart pounding. Marcus stared at her for a moment, his intense gaze sweeping over her face. "Do you have any idea," he began in a controlled tone, "why I might be receiving anonymous messages about my household staff?" Olivia blinked in confusion. "No, Mr. Sterling, I'm not sure what you mean." He lifted the letter and read a portion aloud. "Your new employee is not who she seems. She's closer to Wickfield than you realize." His eyes locked onto hers. "Care to explain, Olivia?" Blood rushed to her face. Wickfield, that name again. She carefully kept her posture composed. "I don't know anything about that. I've never even met anyone named Wickfield." Marcus's lips curved into a cold smile. "How convenient." He moved around the desk until he stood uncomfortably close. She could smell the faint scent of his cologne and whiskey. I've reason to believe, he continued, that you may have a connection to Jason Wickfield, the man responsible for my father's downfall. She swallowed hard, remembering the foster care files that offered so little clarity about her birth parents. I swear I have no idea, sir. I grew up in the foster system. My birth father is unknown to me. Unknown, or are you simply lying? Marcus's voice cracked like a whip. Let me be absolutely clear. If you are indeed Wickfield's daughter, you're standing in enemy territory. Her lower lip trembled, but she kept her voice steady. I don't know if I am, Mr. Sterling, but I'm not here to harm you or anyone. My only purpose is to earn an honest living. He studied her in silence, searching her eyes for any hint of deceit. Eventually, his mouth twitched with a grim sort of amusement. Then I advise you to do your job exceedingly well, because if I find out otherwise... He let the threat hang in the air. The tension weighed heavily between them, so thick Olivia found it difficult to breathe. She managed a respectful nod before he waved her away. As she left his study, her mind spun. The letter's accusation clung to her like an ominous promise of more trouble ahead. Could it be true? Could she be related to Jason Wickfield, the man who nearly destroyed the Sterling family's legacy? Out in the hallway, Harriet lingered, concern etched on her face. Without asking, she offered Olivia a gentle pat on the shoulder. He's upset about something bigger than you, Harriet whispered. Keep your head down, dear, and let the storm pass. But Olivia felt certain this storm wouldn't pass so easily. Some unseen force was closing in, seeking to tear apart the facade of normalcy within the Sterling household. For the remainder of the day, she carried on with her tasks, though her hands shook whenever she recalled Marcus's piercing gaze and the menacing shadow of Jason Wickfield lurking behind her every step. Olivia spent the next several days trying to convince herself that Marcus's suspicions would fade if she simply maintained her composure and professionalism. Still, she couldn't shake the unspoken threat that clung to every interaction she had with him. The more she tried to stay out of his way, the more deliberate and intense his observations became. Late one afternoon, while cleaning the upstairs hallway, she noticed Marcus standing at the far end, staring at her. He said nothing, just watched. She finished dusting and moved to slip past him, but he blocked her path. "Are you planning to quit?" he asked abruptly, voice low. She blinked. "No, Mr. Sterling. I need this job." His gaze flicked over her cleaning rag and the feather duster. For a moment, he seemed almost regretful. But whatever pity he might have felt vanished as quickly as it arose. "Then don't forget you're working on borrowed time," he warned. With that, he stepped aside and left her trembling with confusion and resentment. In the quiet moments, Olivia wrestled with a mounting desire to leave. Her small room at the mansion was a far cry from a real home, but it was stable. The thought of packing up and fleeing into an uncertain world brought back memories of bouncing from one foster home to another, constantly uprooted and never truly belonging anywhere. She had only begun to carve out some semblance of security here. One evening, Harriet knocked gently on Olivia's door. The older woman's stern but caring features softened as she stepped inside. "I was cleaning Mr. Sterling's study earlier," Harriet confided, taking a seat on the edge of the bed. "He mentioned something about a plan, something grand. I overheard him saying he'd soon have his revenge. I fear it involves you." Olivia's hands froze in her lap. "He's never made it a secret that he wants to destroy Wickfield," she whispered. "But why focus on me?" Harriet patted her hand. "You might be a pawn in whatever scheme he's brewing. He's a man of great power, but deep wounds run through him. Don't underestimate what he's capable of." At that, Olivia felt a chill. She respected Harriet's insight. The housekeeper had worked for the Sterlings for decades, surviving the company's tumultuous bankruptcy and the bitterness that ensued. If Harriet believed Marcus was plotting something dangerous, Olivia had every reason to be wary. Nevertheless, she remained torn. For all his harshness, Marcus had moments, fleeting yet unmistakable, where he seemed almost haunted rather than purely cruel. Sometimes he looked at her as if he saw a reflection of his own misery, mirrored in her uncertain eyes. The more Olivia noticed these subtle cracks in his armor, the less certain she felt about running away. The days rolled on, and small obstacles piled up, each one reinforcing her reluctance to change her situation. Marcus began giving her extra tasks, organizing his personal schedule, ensuring every meeting or dinner plan went flawlessly. Each time she tried to politely decline, he'd fix her with a stare that made her swallow her protests. The weight of her foster care memories, her fear of stepping into an even more unstable environment, and the faint hope that something good might emerge, kept her rooted to the mansion. In one particularly tense scene, Olivia nearly dropped a tray of coffee cups when Marcus demanded she serve refreshments to a group of his associates gathered in the living room. Their conversation centered on corporate strategies, but occasionally the name Wickfield cropped up. Marcus's eyes flicked to Olivia each time, as though gauging her reaction. She kept her head bowed, focusing solely on her duties, but the mention of that name sliced through her composure like a razor. That night, back in her room, she paced the floor. Perhaps it was time to consider leaving after all. She could approach the agencies again, find a position elsewhere, even if it meant less pay. How much longer could she subject herself to this environment where every step felt like a misstep waiting to happen? But the moment she started packing, she paused, recalling Harriet's warning and her own budding curiosity. Who was Jason Wickfield really? Had he ever known about her existence? Could her presence in this house be more than just an unfortunate coincidence? A surge of defiance filled her chest. She refused to be chased out without answers. Slipping the clothes back into the closet, Olivia realized she was facing a struggle much bigger than her immediate discomfort. The fear of stepping into the unknown collided with her longing to find some resolution about her origins, whether or not they truly tied her to Wickfield. And beneath it all, she sensed that Marcus, however dangerous, was not the only one with secrets in this house. If she wanted to uncover the truth, both about the Sterlings and her own past, she would have to endure a while longer. A swirl of chatter and clinking glassware filled the grand dining hall one evening, when Marcus hosted a lavish dinner for several influential investors. Olivia stood at the edge of the room, ready to replenish drinks or discreetly tend to any guest's need. Anxiety twisted in her stomach, knowing that eyes would occasionally stray in her direction, only to flick away with dismissive disinterest. Marcus was all polished charm at the head of the table, effortlessly pivoting the conversation between potential mergers, market trends, and the possibility of expanding Sterling Corp into new sectors. His black suit and perfectly styled hair made him look every bit the commanding magnate, but Olivia recognized the hardened glint behind his polite smiles. Partway through the evening, she slipped into the adjacent butler's pantry to gather more wine. Martin Davies, the mansion's loyal chauffeur, who was in his early 60s, stood there pouring himself a glass of water. He offered her a small, kind smile. "Rough crowd," he said softly. Olivia exhaled a tension-filled breath. "They're used to a world I can't begin to understand." She placed the new bottles into a tray, her hand trembling slightly. Martin nodded, taking a measured sip of water. "I've driven around these men for years. They see everything in terms of profit, rarely in terms of people." He paused, then lowered his voice. "Marcus used to be different. Ambitious, yes, but not this. Cold. Ever since his father's downfall, he's changed." She caught the gravity in Martin's tone. "Do you think he truly believes I'm Wickfield's daughter?" Martin hesitated. "I can't say, but if he suspects it, that might be all the reason he needs to involve you in some vengeance scheme. Just be careful." Olivia returned to the dining hall with the wine, her heart pounding. As she approached the table, she overheard Marcus casually mentioning that the Sterling Corp legacy would soon experience a resurgence. He cast a fleeting glance her way, the corner of his mouth tilting in a secretive smile. After dinner, the guests retired to the lounge for cigars and further business talk. Olivia lingered in the main dining area, collecting used plates and silverware. She was stacking them on a serving cart when Harriet brushed by, discreetly pressing a folded note into Olivia's hand. The older woman offered no explanation, merely nodding toward the hallway. Slipping away as soon as she could, Olivia retreated to the quiet corner of the library. She unfolded the note to find a single line. "There is more at stake than you realize. Ask Martin about the past." The handwriting was neat, unfamiliar. Her pulse raced. Clearly, someone within this house wanted her to dig deeper, though she had no idea who wrote it. Moments later, footsteps alerted her that someone was approaching. She hastily tucked the note into her pocket. Marcus walked in, his gaze immediately honing in on her. "Organizing books, are we?" he asked, his tone tinged with sarcasm. "I was just tidying up," Olivia replied, keeping her voice calm. He made a show of examining the spines of a few volumes on the shelf. "Perhaps you can tidy up my father's old records next. There's quite a bit of dust on them." He paused, turning to face her, a certain glimmer in his eyes. "You might learn something." The words sent a jolt of alarm through her, but she forced a polite nod. "Certainly. I can handle that tomorrow." Marcus took a step closer. She could sense the tension radiating off him. "There's a point at which secrets become burdensome, Olivia," he said quietly. "People think they can hide from the truth, but it finds them in the end." His statement felt loaded, as if referencing both her suspected connection to Wickfield and his own obsession with avenging his father. She found herself momentarily speechless, but Marcus didn't wait for a response. He brushed past her, leaving a trace of his cologne in the air. Alone again, she released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. If Marcus was encouraging her to delve into his father's records, it could be a trap, or a twisted invitation to confirm her worst fears. Either way, ignoring it now seemed impossible, especially with the mysterious note urging her to learn more about the past. She resolved to seek Martin after the guests left for the night. He was one of the few people she trusted in the mansion, a paternal figure who might know something about the cryptic message. If Harriet had given her that note, it meant Harriet believed Olivia needed to know more, perhaps about Richard Sterling, or about Wickfield, or some detail linking the two. As she finished clearing the library, the muffled sound of laughter drifted from the lounge. The powerful men attending Marcus's soiree were likely celebrating their own wealth and success, oblivious to the simmering tensions lurking just beneath the surface. Soon enough, that tension might erupt, shattering the carefully crafted illusions that propped up the Sterling name. For now, Olivia contained her questions and her fear, knowing that tomorrow would bring fresh challenges. The day had ended, but her path into the unknown was only just beginning. The following morning, Olivia awoke to the soft glow of dawn filtering through her window. Her mind buzzed with the events of the previous night, the cryptic note, Marcus's unsettling invitation to explore his father's documents, and the promise she'd made to herself to confront Martin. With her morning tasks done, she found him in the mansion's sprawling garage, checking the sleek black town car's engine. "Martin," she said, stepping carefully around a toolbox, "Harriet gave me a note. Someone wants me to ask you about the past. Do you have any idea who might have written it or why?" He straightened, wiping his hands on a rag. Worry flickered in his kindly brown eyes. "I'm not sure who'd risk passing such a message in this house, but I can guess it might be someone who's concerned for your well-being." He waved her to follow him to a quieter corner, away from the security cameras. Olivia's heart fluttered. "What can you tell me?" Martin took a moment to gather his thoughts. "I've been working for the Sterlings for nearly 3 decades. Back then, Marcus was a very different man, eager, hopeful. But when the company's finances collapsed and Richard Sterling pinned the blame on Jason Wickfield, everything changed. Wickfield vanished, and so did whatever bond they once shared. Over time, Marcus's grief and anger hardened into this need for vengeance." She bit her lip. But was Wickfield really the one to cause the ruin, or was that just Richard's story? Martin shook his head. "I never saw evidence that Wickfield was the true villain. In fact, rumors floated that Richard had made some ill-advised investments, possibly even illegal. But Wickfield took the fall, whether fairly or not." He hesitated before continuing. "If you are indeed Wickfield's daughter, you might hold a key to unraveling the full truth." Shaken, Olivia recalled the documents she'd glimpsed in the library. "And if Marcus is convinced I'm Wickfield's daughter, that might be why he proposed something to me. Something bizarre," she began, but then stopped short. She hadn't told Martin about the strange ultimatum yet, the one that hovered like a storm cloud, threatening to unleash at any moment. She cast a sidelong glance at the open garage door, where the warm California sun lit up the driveway. "Marcus implied that I owe him loyalty, that I need to prove my innocence if I truly have no links to Wickfield. But deep down, I think he wants me here because he believes it will help him get his revenge." Martin sighed heavily. "Marcus has a blind spot when it comes to his father's downfall. He doesn't want to believe Richard was ever at fault." Then, lowering his voice further, he added, "Just be careful. Men who seek vengeance can destroy anyone in their path, including themselves." Before she could ask more, Harriet's voice rang out from the hallway leading to the garage. "Olivia, Marcus is looking for you. He wants you in the study." The older woman caught Olivia's eye, silently offering her moral support. Taking a steadying breath, Olivia left Martin behind and headed for the study. She found Marcus standing by a large window, looking out over the manicured gardens. A swirl of tension rippled through her as he turned, his gaze locking onto hers. "Olivia," he said, his tone oddly subdued. "We need to discuss a proposition." Her stomach churned. "Yes, Mr. Sterling." He motioned for her to sit. "My attorneys have been working on a document, an agreement of sorts. I've decided that we should marry." For a moment, she thought she'd misheard. The word marry hung in the air like an absurd echo. Her breath caught in her throat, and she managed to choke out, "Marry? That's not... Why would we do that?" His eyes darkened. "Because I have reason to believe you're the daughter of Jason Wickfield, and I intend to make you pay for what your father did to mine. But a simple lawsuit would be far too mundane. I want something more. Public." She shot to her feet, disbelief and anger colliding. "You can't be serious." Marcus's voice cracked with an icy resolve. "You'll agree, or I'll ensure you lose this job, any future prospects, and face a legal battle of your own. All I ask is that you become my wife, at least until I see fit to end this arrangement." Olivia's heart hammered in her chest. She remembered Martin's warning about men consumed by vengeance. This was madness. Yet part of her recognized that fleeing now would only shroud her in permanent questions about who she was, about whether she indeed had ties to Wickfield. Marcus stepped closer, closing the distance between them. "Don't answer me right away. Think about it. But do not take too long." Her mind reeled. Standing in that opulent study, the entire world tilted on its axis, she felt both horror and an inexplicable flicker of possibility. If she accepted, she might finally uncover the truth about her birth. But agreeing to such a twisted bargain could cost her everything. She left the study in a daze, Harriet waiting outside with a concerned expression. "Is everything all right?" the housekeeper asked softly. Olivia's eyes glistened with unshed tears. No, not at all. Yet, despite the terror coursing through her veins, a faint flicker of determination sparked within her. If this was indeed the call to an unimaginable adventure, she would have to decide soon whether to take the first step into the unknown or walk away forever. A hush settled over the Sterling mansion in the wake of Marcus's shocking proposal. The household staff whispered among themselves, speculating on what might happen next. Olivia felt as if she were walking on a tightrope between two precarious cliffs, the fear of succumbing to Marcus's manipulative request and the need to uncover the truth about her past. Late one morning, Harriet found Olivia staring at the arrangement of floral bouquets near the grand staircase. The housekeeper gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "I realize you're going through a lot, dear, but there's someone here to see you. She says she knows you from long ago, though I've never heard you mention her." Curious and apprehensive, Olivia followed Harriet to the small sitting room off the foyer. Waiting by a lace-curtained window stood an elegant older woman, dressed in a tailored navy suit. Her silver hair was pinned neatly at the nape of her neck, and she exuded an air of calm assurance. "Olivia," the woman greeted, extending a slender hand. "My name is Agnes Fisher. I believe I may have known your mother, your birth mother, many years ago." Olivia's heart fluttered. "I never knew my biological mother," she admitted quietly, overwhelmed by the sudden possibility that Agnes might fill in some of the blanks from her childhood. Agnes inclined her head in sympathy. "I'm a retired attorney. Your mother, Carolyn, once sought my help, though we lost contact shortly afterward. I had no idea you ended up in the foster system." Her gaze swept over Olivia, sadness flickering in her eyes. "When I heard rumors that a woman named Olivia Wilson, possibly Carolyn's daughter, was working for Marcus Sterling, I had to come see you." Harriet, sensing the conversation's importance, discreetly excused herself. Agnes gestured for Olivia to sit on a nearby sofa. She began outlining the fragments she knew. Carolyn Wilson had been involved, at least peripherally, in the financial troubles surrounding Sterling Corp. And a certain Jason Wickfield. Agnes recalled that Carolyn feared for her child's future because of those entanglements. "That's why I'm here now," Agnes continued, lowering her voice. "I suspect Marcus is using you to avenge what he believes Wickfield did to his father. If I can help you navigate this mess, I will. But you must be cautious. Marcus is not a man who forgives easily." A surge of gratitude coursed through Olivia, though it carried a note of fear. "I appreciate any help you can give," she said. "He's already demanded that I marry him, like I'm a chess piece to be moved around for his revenge." Agnes placed a steady hand on Olivia's wrist, her tone calming. "If you choose to go down this path, make sure you know exactly what you're getting into. It may be dangerous, but you have every right to protect yourself and the memories of those who came before you. You're stronger than you think." Their conversation lasted nearly an hour, with Agnes offering advice on how to protect any documents Olivia might uncover about the Sterling family or Wickfield. She warned Olivia that legal battles could be brutal if Marcus decided to escalate the conflict. Yet the elder woman also held out a glimmer of hope, suggesting that truth, once exposed, had the power to dismantle even the most deeply rooted lies. Before leaving, Agnes pressed a business card into Olivia's hand. "Call me anytime, day or night," she said. "I have a feeling you'll need someone firmly on your side." That evening, Olivia replayed Agnes's words as she dusted the library shelves, a task that felt oddly symbolic now that she was determined to unearth secrets hidden in those same walls. She paused to study the portrait of Richard Sterling hanging above the fireplace, a man so revered in his son's memory, yet rumored to have orchestrated his own downfall through fraudulent deals. A sudden sound made her turn. Marcus stood in the doorway, jacket slung over one arm. "I hear we had a visitor," he remarked casually. His eyes narrowed when he saw Olivia's guarded expression. "I do hope you're not plotting anything behind my back." She summoned a composure she barely felt. "A friend of my mother's came to see me, that's all." He considered her a long moment, then exhaled. "You would be wise to remember your role here. I won't be crossed." With that, he vanished into the corridor. Olivia inhaled unsteadily, her conversation with Agnes echoing in her mind. For the first time in days, she felt a seed of courage take root. She wasn't entirely alone. A mentor figure, someone with knowledge of her past, had stepped forward, offering both guidance and a lifeline. Standing in the quiet library, Olivia vowed to remain vigilant. The next steps, whatever they were, would require her to abandon the fragile semblance of normalcy she had clung to. And though fear still coiled within her, Agnes's belief in her potential to withstand Marcus's schemes gave her a glimmer of hope. The decision to confront this twisted path might prove her undoing, or it might unearth the truth she so desperately needed. In the early hours of the next day, Olivia packed her few belongings from the small attic room where she'd lived as a member of the Sterling Mansion's staff. The musty space with its single narrow window had been her refuge. But Marcus's recent instructions, barked at her the night before, made it clear she would no longer be sleeping among the servants. Harriet helped her fold the last of her clothes into a modest suitcase. "He says you'll move into the guest suite on the second floor," the older woman explained, her voice subdued. "I don't like this at all, but I can't stop it. Just be careful." At 30 years old, Olivia had never lived anywhere so luxurious. Stepping into the guest suite felt surreal. Cream-colored carpeting, a balcony overlooking the manicured gardens, and mahogany furniture larger than anything she'd ever owned dominated the space. Yet she found it hard to admire. It felt like a gilded cage, a reminder of the impending marriage that Marcus demanded. A knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. Harriet peeked in, her face lined with worry. "Marcus wants to see you in the drawing room. A lawyer is with him." Dread pooled in Olivia's stomach. She braced herself for whatever contractual obligation Marcus had dreamed up. Once in the drawing room, she found him seated beside a stiff-looking attorney in a black suit. On the table lay a stack of documents. "Sit," Marcus ordered, not unkindly but with a tone that brooked no argument. Olivia complied, noticing a fountain pen resting near the papers. The lawyer cleared his throat. "Miss Wilson, this is a preliminary prenuptial agreement. Mr. Sterling asked me to outline certain conditions of your forthcoming marriage." Her eyes flicked to Marcus, who watched her impassively. As the lawyer explained the contract's clauses, stipulations about property division, inheritance rights, and public appearances, Olivia felt the weight of 1,000 judgments. Each line spelled out her vulnerability. If she walked away, she risked financial and social ruin. If she stayed, she would be legally bound to a man who despised her connection, real or imagined, to Jason Wickfield. At last, Marcus broke the silence. "Sign it by the end of the week, or consider yourself dismissed." Olivia inhaled, grappling with the ultimatum. She kept her voice steady as she asked, "What do you really want from me, Mr. Sterling? Revenge is all I hear you talk about, but is that truly it?" A shadow flickered across his features. "That's all you need to concern yourself with." He stood, signaling that the meeting was over. The lawyer began to gather his files, and Olivia watched as the two men exited, leaving her alone with the stack of papers. She recalled Agnes's advice: read carefully, keep your guard up, and never lose sight of your own agency. She scanned the pages, her head spinning. Some clauses seemed fair enough, standard for a wealthy man protecting his assets. Others were chilling, provisions that limited her freedom to speak publicly about the family's affairs. It was a stark reminder that, for Marcus, this marriage was little more than a public facade designed to humiliate her and, by extension, the Wickfield name. Retreating to her new suite, she found Harriet waiting with a worried expression. "I heard the lawyer leave," Harriet said softly. "What are you going to do?" Olivia placed the documents on a small writing desk near the balcony. "I'll read every word. Then I'll decide." A flicker of defiance sparked in her eyes. "But I have until the end of the week," Harriet sighed, visibly relieved that Olivia wasn't rushing into signing. "I'm glad you're being cautious, Marcus. He's more complicated than anyone realizes. He won't hesitate to exploit weakness, but there's still a part of him, I believe, that isn't beyond reach." "How can you be sure?" Olivia asked, almost inaudible. "I saw the way he was when he was younger," Harriet said, her voice thoughtful. "He once had kindness in him. It's buried under bitterness now." Olivia's gaze wandered to the window. She could hear birds outside, an oddly peaceful sound in the midst of her turmoil. "I'll consider that," she said quietly. That night, as she studied the prenuptial agreement alone, she felt the tug of two separate forces, the temptation to run and the conviction to stay. If she remained, it wouldn't be merely to placate Marcus. Agnes's words rang in her mind. "If you choose to go down this path, you must protect yourself and the truths you uncover." In the end, her life of drifting from foster homes to menial jobs had taught her one unshakable lesson. There came a time when you had to stand and face whatever threatened to consume you. If this bizarre marriage was the key to unraveling the lies surrounding Jason Wickfield and her own place in the world, she would find the strength to endure it. 4 days later, the phone calls began. The Sterling Mansion's switchboard buzzed with endless requests from journalists and socialites, each eager to confirm the rumors that Marcus Sterling, heir to a once-disgraced financial empire, was marrying his longtime house employee. The tabloids had already dubbed it a modern Cinderella story, albeit one stained by scandal. Marcus responded by throwing Olivia into the deep end of high society. He insisted she attend every event and function leading up to the wedding, determined to parade her around as though showcasing a peculiar trophy. On a Wednesday evening, Olivia found herself dressed in an elegant but understated black gown, stepping out of the Sterling limousine outside an exclusive Beverly Hills charity gala. Nicole Rutherford, a stylish event organizer in her early 40s, greeted them at the entrance. Marcus knew Nicole from previous business functions, but Olivia had never met her. The moment they stepped aside from the cameras, Nicole leaned in to whisper conspiratorially, "You must be Olivia. I've heard so much, and not all of it flattering." Her quick wink hinted at empathy rather than judgment. Olivia forced a polite smile, uncomfortable with the curious stares from the crowd. She murmured, "I'm afraid I'm quite the conversation piece lately." Nicole lowered her voice further. "I don't believe the rumors. Nobody's life fits into the neat little boxes the tabloids try to create." Her gaze flicked to Marcus, who was busy shaking hands with an investor at the other side of the grand foyer. "Just be careful. High society loves to devour its own." Moments later, they moved into the ballroom. Crystal chandeliers glittered overhead, and an opulent buffet lined one wall. The guests, clad in designer suits and gowns, chatted about charity auctions, hedge funds, and the latest scandals. Olivia did her best to avoid the inquisitive eyes darting her way, but it was impossible not to notice the hushed comments trailing in her wake. She tried to steel her nerves, recalling Agnes's advice: remain poised, gather information, and keep your mind clear. While Marcus smiled through superficial pleasantries, Olivia found herself drawn to quiet corners of conversation. That's how she encountered Helena Beaumont, a retired actress known for her frankness. Helena sipped champagne near a marble pillar, casting an appraising glance at Olivia. "So you're the one causing such a stir," she greeted, her voice tinged with wry amusement. "I'm Helena. I've been to my share of these circuses, charity galas." Olivia appreciated the lack of malice in her tone. "I apologize if I'm not quite dressed for the occasion or if I seem lost. I'm not used to all this." Helena nodded sympathetically. "Let me guess, you'd rather be anywhere else?" "Yes," Olivia admitted, exhaling a shaky breath. "But it seems I'm supposed to be here." They exchanged a few more words, Helena dropping hints about how to navigate the social labyrinth, when to smile, when to feign interest, which individuals to avoid. Sensing a possible ally, Olivia confided, "I'm actually trying to figure out the truth behind the Sterling family's past. I'm caught in something much bigger than me." Helena's eyes flickered with curiosity. "Don't let them underestimate you. You have more power than you think." Across the room, Marcus observed them with a faint scowl. He excused himself from a conversation and approached. "Helena Beaumont," he greeted with cool courtesy. "It's been a while. Please excuse us. I need a moment alone with my fiancée." Helena gave Olivia a parting nod. Marcus led Olivia to a secluded hallway outside the main ballroom. "Stay close," he instructed in a whisper tinged with warning. "The last thing I need is you making friends who might fill your head with nonsense." A spark of defiance ignited in Olivia. "Is that what you think I'm doing? Collecting gossip to turn against you?" He pressed his lips into a tight line. "I know how these people operate. One slip of the tongue and the rumor mill will tear you apart. Our arrangement won't be worth much if you ruin the image we're trying to project." Olivia couldn't help noticing the undercurrent of protectiveness, however begrudging, in his warning. "Fine," she said, crossing her arms. "But I won't stand around like a prop either." Marcus's eyes narrowed. "You will do what I ask, or this ends badly for you." She glared back, refusing to be cowed. "Then maybe you should have chosen someone else for this farce." A flicker of something, confusion, regret, or perhaps begrudging respect, surfaced in Marcus's gaze before he turned away, guiding them both back into the gala. For the rest of the evening, Olivia smiled for the cameras and spoke politely to donors, all while a silent war raged between her and Marcus. By the time they finally left, her feet ached, and her nerves were frayed from the relentless scrutiny. Yet a glimmer of determination kept her upright. She had survived her first real foray into the high society special world, gleaning at least one invaluable lesson. Behind the polished exterior lay a battlefield of egos, secrets, and alliances. She might be an outsider, but she wasn't helpless. Helena's kindness and Nicole's friendly caution proved that not everyone in these circles wanted to see her fail. And despite his threats, Marcus had, in some small way, shown concern, twisted though it might be, about her well-being. That night, as the limousine glided back to the Sterling mansion, Olivia gazed at the city lights passing by. She felt both exhausted and emboldened. The threshold had been crossed. There was no turning back now. 2 days later, Olivia found herself immersed in lessons on etiquette and public image, courtesy of Mrs. Jollisurset, an elderly instructor whose reputation for turning awkward debutantes into refined socialites was legendary. Marcus had insisted on these sessions, determined to shape Olivia into an ideal accessory for his grand revenge. They convened in a sunlit parlor near the back of the mansion, surrounded by porcelain figurines and polished mirrors. Mrs. Hall, her posture ramrod straight, circled Olivia, observing every movement with a critical eye. "Your posture, dear." Mrs. Hall scolded gently. "Imagine a cord pulling you up from the crown of your head, shoulders down, chin raised just slightly." Olivia did her best to comply, but nerves made her tense. She felt more like a student under strict surveillance than a bride-to-be. "I'm doing my best," she murmured, forcing a small smile. Mrs. Hall's expression softened a fraction. "I know, dear. I can see you're trying. But these are the circles you'll have to navigate now. If you go in unprepared, they'll devour you." Between lessons on the proper way to hold a wine glass and the polite topics one should discuss at a formal dinner, Olivia's mind kept drifting. She recalled the upcoming wedding, only weeks away. The idea of taking vows with Marcus under these deceitful circumstances weighed heavily on her heart. At lunchtime, Mrs. Hall let her take a break. Olivia slipped outside into the garden, yearning for a moment of peace. She found Harriet and Martin sitting by a stone bench, sharing a light meal. They welcomed her with kind smiles, even as concern knitted their brows. "How's etiquette training?" Martin teased, offering her a sandwich. "You look exhausted." She sighed, accepting the food. "Mrs. Hall is thorough. She acts like I'm about to enter a battlefield." Harriet patted her knee. "In some ways you are. These high society events can be cruel. But you've already proven you can handle adversity." As they chatted, Olivia remembered Agnes's advice: keep gathering knowledge. She quietly brought up the name Jason Wickfield, asking if Harriet or Martin had heard more rumors circulating. Martin stroked his chin thoughtfully. "I've heard the staff whispering about the old scandal again, ever since Marcus announced the wedding. Some believe that if you really are Wickfield's daughter, Marcus is setting a trap, planning to destroy your reputation once you share his name." A grim chill settled in Olivia's bones. "He's hinted as much himself." Harriet shook her head in dismay. "There must be a reason he's so convinced you're Wickfield's child. Did you ever find any official document, birth certificate, anything at all?" "Not yet," Olivia admitted, feeling frustration well up. "But I'm certain the answers lie somewhere in this house, or in the offices of Sterling Corp." She managed a small, determined smile. "I won't let him break me without a fight." Afternoon came, and Olivia returned to her lesson indoors. Mrs. Hall demonstrated how to gracefully descend a flight of stairs, presumably for the wedding ceremony. "Gentle steps, eyes focused straight ahead," the instructor said, positioning Olivia at the top of the marble staircase. Taking a breath, Olivia began her descent. Her foot caught on a step, and she stumbled. Heart hammering, she gripped the banister in a last-second bid for balance. Mrs. Hall gasped, fear momentarily twisting her features. Before Olivia could fully recover, a hand seized her arm, steadying her. She glanced up to find Marcus at her side, brow furrowed. "Be careful," he admonished, though his grip was not unkind. "The last thing I need is a fiancé with a broken ankle before our wedding." Olivia's cheeks heated. She straightened, aware of Mrs. Hall observing from below. "Thank you," she managed, her tone clipped. Marcus released her arm, but lingered. "I've arranged another social gathering in 2 days, a charity fashion show. You'll attend with me, of course." Weariness pooled in her. "Another event? You'd better get used to it." His tone was brusque, yet his concern moments ago still hovered in the air. "We are building our public image, after all." For a fleeting moment, She recalled Harriet's words about a hidden softness once present in Marcus. She couldn't imagine it now, given his almost militaristic approach to controlling every aspect of their future. Yet she caught a glimpse of something uncertain in his eyes before he turned away, an unspoken tension, as though he too found this charade exhausting. Mrs. Hall cleared her throat, signaling they should resume the lesson. Olivia forced herself to refocus, mastering the stares, the dinner etiquette, the rehearsed small talk. These were her new weapons, tools that might eventually grant her access to the deeper truths locked away behind the sterling name. When the lesson ended, she retreated to her suite, arms and legs sore from the day's practice. Despite her physical fatigue, her mind refused to rest. The mansion's corridors and rooms felt charged with secrets, each door a potential gateway to revelation. She resolved to keep her eyes and ears open, every graceful step a move in this intricate game that was slowly molding her into someone she never expected to become. Sunlight streamed through tall windows in the Sterling Mansion's music room, reflecting off a glossy, grand piano. This rarely used space had been converted into a makeshift meeting spot for the growing circle of people who actually supported Olivia. That morning, while Marcus was engaged in an important video conference upstairs, Olivia found herself there with two new, unlikely allies, Helena Beaumont and Nicole Rutherford. "I hope you don't mind me dropping by," Helena said, removing a pair of oversized sunglasses. "Nicole and I were at a brunch nearby. We thought you might want some company." Nicole, the poised event planner who'd shown Olivia kindness at the gala, added, "We also have a few ideas on how you can navigate your upcoming public appearances without letting Marcus control every aspect of your image." Olivia, caught off guard but grateful, gestured for them to sit on the velvet-upholstered chairs near the piano. She realized she knew precious little about these women beyond their reputations in high society. Yet they seemed genuine in their concern, and after weeks of enduring suspicion and isolation, she welcomed their counsel. Helena crossed her legs, her expression warm. "For what it's worth, Olivia, I admire you for standing up to these people. The gossip mill is brutal, but you haven't cracked under the pressure." Nicole nodded. "You'll have more events to attend, I'm sure. But with Helena's flair for dealing with the media and my connections among the philanthropic crowd, we can help you set the tone. Show them you're not just an accessory to Marcus's revenge." Olivia exhaled a long breath. "I'm beyond grateful, but I won't lie. I'm still unsure of my next steps. Part of me wants to unearth the Sterling family's secrets. Another part just wants to escape." She hesitated, then confided in them about the rumors linking her to Jason Wickfield and Marcus's insistence that she marry him for reasons that went far beyond love. To her relief, neither woman seemed surprised nor disgusted by the twisted arrangement. If anything, they appeared more determined to help. Helena leaned forward. "I knew Richard Sterling, Marcus's father, slightly years ago. He was charming, but there were whispers about shady deals. If you can prove that Wickfield was framed or that Richard was responsible for his own downfall, it might change everything." Nicole agreed. "It might even show Marcus that his entire crusade is built on false premises." Their words stoked the embers of Olivia's resolve. She had never considered herself a champion of justice, but if revealing the truth could free her, and possibly Marcus, from this bitter cycle, it was worth pursuing. They devised a plan to subtly glean information at upcoming charity events. Helena, with her Hollywood connections, could arrange backstage passes or private conversations that might yield useful leads. Nicole, on the philanthropic side, promised to introduce Olivia to discreet insiders who had known the Sterlings and Wickfield back in the day. Just as they finished discussing the finer points, Harriet poked her head in. "Mr. Sterling wants to see you, Olivia. He's in his study." She eyed Helena and Nicole with a guarded look, but said nothing further, stepping away quietly. Bracing herself, Olivia walked toward the study. Her two friends offered encouraging smiles, and she held onto that warmth like a shield against the chill of Marcus's domain. She found him standing beside a sprawling walnut desk, reviewing a set of documents. Without preamble, he shoved a glossy invitation into her hand. "Another charity function," he said tersely. "You'll accompany me tomorrow night." Olivia bit back the urge to sigh. "All right." He glanced at the stack of folders on the desk. "Also, I need your help organizing these. Some are related to my father's old partnerships. We're finalizing a significant deal, and I don't want any complications." Her pulse quickened. This was an unexpected opportunity. "I'll do my best." Carefully, she began sorting through the files, noting familiar names, ex-board members of Sterling Corp, investors from decades past, and there it was again, Jason Wickfield. Marcus's watchful presence behind her kept her from openly staring, so she maintained a steady rhythm, placing each folder into its designated pile. But every nerve in her body hummed. If she were lucky, she might glean a clue from these records. "Thank you," Marcus said after a moment, his tone gruff. "We may not always see eye to eye, but I do expect efficiency." She set the final folder in place and turned to face him. "You'll have it." He studied her with a searching look. "Those friends of yours, Helena, Nicole, what exactly do they want with you?" Olivia refused to flinch. "They're just offering support. Isn't that what I need, given the pressure I'm under?" Marcus's jaw tightened, but he said nothing further, dismissing her with a silent gesture. Stepping out of the study, Olivia felt a rush of adrenaline. Though her every move was scrutinized, she now had allies, however unexpected. Helena and Nicole promised fresh avenues for discovery, and Agnes's mentorship remained a vital lifeline. Yes, Marcus was controlling and dangerous, but knowledge was power. And each passing day, Olivia gathered more of it, weaving a network of confidants who might help her unravel the tapestry of secrets that bound her to the Sterlings. In the glow of that possibility, even her looming wedding felt slightly less suffocating. A week later, tabloids erupted with sensational headlines. "Billionaire Sterling's strange engagement. Is it business or pleasure?" Despite Marcus's attempts to project a carefully polished narrative, rumors swirled of a scandal behind the impending wedding. They ranged from claims that Olivia was an opportunistic gold digger to wild theories that Marcus had orchestrated the match for sinister reasons. In the quiet of a late afternoon, Olivia wandered into one of the mansion's smaller lounges to catch her breath. She'd spent the day fielding calls, ensuring the house was prepared for another weekend of visitors and events. Her nerves felt raw, frayed by the intrusive speculation and the knowledge that Marcus himself did nothing to refute the rumors. Suddenly, Nicole appeared in the doorway, her phone in hand. "I was just talking to Helena. A major entertainment news show wants an exclusive interview with you both. About the wedding, your life story, the works." Olivia's stomach turned. "Marcus won't allow it. He'd see it as me stepping out of line." "He wants total control." Nicole's eyes narrowed. "We could frame it as a chance to share your side of the story. You might clear the air about those rumors." Before Olivia could respond, she heard footsteps in the hall. Marcus, ever the commanding presence, walked in. He glanced at Nicole, then fixed his gaze on Olivia. "What's this I hear about an interview?" Nicole cleared her throat. "It could be beneficial. The public is curious, and it might ease some of the negative press swirling around your engagement." Marcus's expression hardened. "I don't want outsiders poking around. My affairs are my own." Nicole didn't back down easily. Perhaps that was true before this scandal blew up, but controlling the narrative might serve you better now. He looked ready to argue, but something in Nicole's stance must have struck a chord. His eyes flicked to Olivia, and he exhaled. I'll consider it, but if it happens, I'll be present. And Olivia, you'll say nothing to undermine this marriage. Understood? She nodded, though the idea of staging an interview to mask a false union made her uneasy. Even so, the chance to subtly refute some lies while not exposing everything was tempting. That evening, in the privacy of her suite, Olivia mulled over the potential interview. She couldn't directly accuse Marcus of blackmailing her into marriage, but maybe she could convey some truths about her past, her aspirations, without giving away her plan to uncover the real story behind the Sterling downfall. Her thoughts were interrupted by a text message from Helena. Watch out for tabloids. Another wave of rumors is coming, something about you forging your identity. A chill ran down Olivia's spine. The idea that people might question not just her motives, but her entire identity cut deep, especially because she herself didn't fully know her lineage. Squeezing the phone tightly, she felt anger rise. If Marcus was fueling these rumors to paint her as a fraud, he was playing a dangerous game. Determined to confront him, she marched down to the library, where he often retreated at this hour. She found him at a large wooden desk, papers strewn about. He looked up, surprise flickering across his features at her intrusion. I heard new rumors are set to surface, accusing me of forging documents about my own identity, she said, voice trembling with controlled fury. Is that your doing? He leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. I'm not the only one who hates Wickfield's family. There are others who'd rather see you discredited. That's not an answer. He rose to his feet. You want answers? Fine. I'm not fueling these rumors, but I'm not putting them out either. You need to understand something. The name Wickfield carries a stain in certain circles, and people will do anything to bury it. Olivia's face flushed hot. Then why make me a part of this at all? If you truly believe I'm Wickfield's daughter, why give me a platform to draw more attention to the name you despise? A muscle ticked in Marcus's jaw. Because sometimes, to destroy your enemy, you have to bring them closer. I want everyone to see what happens when the last trace of Wickfield stands by my side and ultimately falls. His words landed like a punch. A bitter laugh escaped her. And what if the truth behind your father's downfall isn't what you think it is? Ever considered that maybe you've built your revenge on a foundation of lies? For a moment, Marcus's composure cracked. She saw confusion, even pain, flash across his face. Then he regained his self-assured sneer. That's enough. She turned to leave, but his voice stopped her at the door. One more thing, he said softly. If you truly are innocent in all this, maybe you should be more careful. You have no idea how many people want to tear you down for reasons that have nothing to do with me. Her hand tightened on the doorknob. His tone, for once, lacked its usual venom, as though warning her of lurking dangers beyond his personal vendetta. Slowly, she stepped out, her heart pounding. She retreated to her suite, reflecting on the possibility that Marcus might not be the only threat. Perhaps other figures from the Sterling or Wickfield past were eager to keep their secrets buried. Though she felt cornered, she reminded herself that she wasn't alone. Helena, Nicole, Agnes, Harriet, and Martin stood by her in one form or another. But this first true confrontation with Marcus had revealed something deeper. A man who believed in his cause, yet carried unspoken doubts. If she could expose the truth behind Richard Sterling's downfall, maybe she could break through his hardened exterior. The question was, would the truth set them both free or crush them completely? Soft rays of the late afternoon sun slanted through the tall windows of the Sterling Mansion's ballroom, illuminating a swirl of activity. Florists bustled in with massive bouquets, caterers hurried past carrying trays of tasting samples, and decorators discussed fabric swatches for table linens. Although the wedding date was still a few weeks away, the preparations were ramping up at an almost frantic pace. It seemed Marcus Sterling intended to spare no expense or scrutiny in crafting his grand spectacle. Olivia stood at the edge of this orchestrated chaos, watching with a mix of wonder and dread. Despite every misgiving, she had decided to move forward with the wedding. She clung to the hope that by continuing on this path, she might finally unearth the truth about her alleged father, Jason Wickfield, and possibly free herself and Marcus from the weight of a misguided vendetta. Amid the bustle, Harriet approached, carrying a clipboard. "We need a final count of how many guests you'll be inviting personally," she said, glancing up. Then she added in a whisper, "Are you holding up all right?" Olivia forced a small smile. "I've been better, but I'll manage." She skimmed the guest list Harriet had compiled. Names from Marcus's world populated every line. CEOs, investors, socialites. Only a handful belonged to Olivia, her close acquaintances like Helena, Nicole, and Agnes. She felt a pang, realizing she had no family to invite, no one with a shared childhood memory or a parental bond. Suddenly, a commotion near the double doors drew everyone's attention. One of the head florists tripped and nearly toppled a towering arrangement of white lilies. Olivia darted forward, steadying the swaying vases just before they shattered on the marble floor. A wave of relief swept over her as Harriet and a few decorators hurried to help the florist. The near disaster seemed emblematic of her own precarious situation. One misstep, and everything could come crashing down. A few minutes later, she felt a presence at her shoulder. Marcus had arrived, wearing the polished mask he often showed the public. His dark eyes flicked over the bustling room. "Everything must be flawless," he stated, more to himself than to her. "No mistakes." "Understood," Olivia murmured, stepping aside as he strode to confer with the head caterer. The constant pressure to achieve perfection weighed heavily on everyone in the household, but she sensed a deeper tension within Marcus. His drive for a grandiose wedding wasn't purely about status. It seemed fueled by an urgent need to display mastery over the narrative. That urgency suggested an undercurrent of insecurity, an unspoken fear that all the illusions could unravel with the slightest provocation. Later that day, Olivia found a moment of respite in the mansion's greenhouse, a glass-walled space filled with vibrant orchids and exotic ferns. She often retreated here to clear her head. The cascading water from a decorative fountain provided the only soothing sound in an environment otherwise rife with stress. She was startled to see Martin, the chauffeur, seated on a wrought-iron bench, gazing pensively at the foliage. He rose as she approached, tipping his cap in a friendly gesture. "Needed a quiet moment?" he asked gently. She nodded, sinking onto the bench beside him. "Feels like everything is piling up. The wedding, the rumors, the possibility that I might actually be Jason Wickfield's daughter." Martin's eyes reflected understanding. "I've seen this place at its best and worst. I've watched Marcus grow from a hopeful young man into someone hardened by betrayal and heartbreak. I don't condone his actions, but I understand why he's become so fixated on revenge." She studied him, recalling the decades he'd spent within these walls. "Do you believe Wickfield is truly the villain Marcus claims he is?" Martin hesitated before answering. "I don't think the story is as simple as that. Rumors circulated back then, but the truth never surfaced." Richard Sterling placed the blame squarely on Wickfield's shoulders. Maybe it was convenient for him to do so. He rested a hand on Olivia's shoulder. "If you uncover that Wickfield was innocent, it could change everything." But it won't be easy. Some of the people who were involved might go to great lengths to keep their secrets hidden. A shiver ran through her, despite the warm greenhouse. Thank you. I'll be careful. After a silent moment, Martin added, and don't forget, you have allies here. You don't have to do this alone. His words reminded her of Helena, Nicole, Agnes, Harriet, each offering a piece of the puzzle, a shield against the mansion's darker influences. She felt a flicker of renewed courage. That evening, as the staff wrapped up the day's preparations, Olivia lingered in the ballroom. The last rays of sunlight spilled through the high windows, gilding the space in an amber glow. Fresh floral arrangements lined the tables, and rows of chairs stood waiting for the day of vows. It was breathtakingly beautiful and undeniably daunting. In that silence, she allowed herself one simple wish, that truth might emerge from the chaos, that the wedding she was about to endure would serve as a gateway to freedom rather than a life sentence under Marcus Sterling's control. 2 mornings later, Olivia stepped into a black SUV, heart pounding as she settled into the passenger seat. Agnes Fisher, the retired attorney who'd known her birth mother, sat at the wheel, her calm demeanor providing a measure of reassurance. They pulled out of the Sterling Mansion's iron gates, heading toward a suburban neighborhood on the outskirts of Los Angeles. I arranged this meeting with someone who used to be part of Sterling Corp. As legal team, Agnes explained. He's retired now and not exactly eager to talk, but he owes me a favor, despite a creeping sense of unease. Olivia nodded, adjusting her sunglasses. What's his name? Charles Bowen. He was a junior associate when Richard Sterling filed for bankruptcy. If anyone knows where the real skeletons are buried, it's him, Agnes said, turning onto a quieter side street. They parked outside a modest ranch-style home. The front yard was tidy, with a couple of rose bushes in bloom. Agnes led Olivia up a short walkway and knocked on the door. After a lengthy pause, it opened to reveal a weary-eyed man in his 60s, his hair thinning and grey. He wore a cardigan and clutched a mug of coffee. Agnes introduced Olivia. Charles's gaze flicked to her, then away, as though uncomfortable with the situation. He stepped aside, silently inviting them in. They settled in a cramped living room, and he waited until they were seated to speak. "I told you on the phone," he began, addressing Agnes. "I don't want trouble. I left that life behind." Agnes inclined her head. "I understand, Charles. But sometimes the past doesn't stay buried." Olivia leaned forward. "I need to know if Jason Wickfield was truly responsible for bankrupting Sterling Corp. Everyone I talk to suggests there's more to the story." The older man sighed, setting his coffee mug on a cluttered side table. Wickfield was a partner, yes, but the official records pinned everything on him. Embezzlement, insider trading, you name it. But if you're asking for my personal belief, I always suspected Richard Sterling had a bigger hand in it than anyone realized. The numbers never added up to a single man's fault. There were too many hidden accounts, too many last-minute fund transfers. Olivia's heart thudded. Did anyone challenge that narrative? Charles shook his head. Hard to do. Richard was a powerful figure with even more powerful connections. I tried raising questions, but I was warned off. The implication was clear. Keep my mouth shut if I valued my career. Agnes's expression hardened. And now, the truth might help someone who could be caught in the crosshairs of Richard's son. Charles rubbed his temples, visibly conflicted. Finally, he stood and disappeared into a back room. He returned with a dusty accordion file. I've held on to these all these years, half out of guilt. They're copies of some depositions and bank statements that never made it into the official court records. Maybe they'll shed light on the real story. He handed the file to Agnes, pointedly avoiding Olivia's eyes. Take them and keep me out of it. Olivia accepted the documents with trembling hands. "Thank you. I promise we won't mention your name if we can help it." As they rose to leave, Charles' shoulders sagged with relief. "Then I wish you luck. Because if you're looking to exonerate Wickfield, you'll be attacking the foundation upon which the Sterling family's current reputation stands. And Marcus, he's not the sort of man to take that lightly." Back in the SUV, Agnes placed the file on her lap, carefully avoiding a pothole as she steered onto the main road. Olivia flipped through the top pages: old legal briefs, meeting notes, financial spreadsheets. Though she was no expert, even a quick glance confirmed glaring discrepancies. "This could be it," she whispered, eyes shining with a mix of hope and trepidation. "Proof that my father, if he really was Jason Wickfield, wasn't the sole villain, or maybe not a villain at all." Agnes nodded. "It's something, but we'll need more to build a convincing picture. Even if we find proof, Marcus might not believe it, or if he does, he might do everything in his power to discredit it." They drove on in contemplative silence, the file feeling heavier by the moment. As they neared Beverly Hills, Agnes turned to Olivia with grave concern. "Guard these documents with your life. Don't let Marcus find them prematurely. If you need a safe place, let me know." By the time they arrived at the mansion gates, Olivia had settled on a plan. She would hide the file in a secure location, then carefully piece together each clue. Rushing to confront Marcus now would only provoke his wrath and jeopardize any chance of changing the twisted course he'd set for their future. Once inside her suite, Olivia locked the door and laid out the contents on a wide desk. Each page confirmed that Richard Sterling had engaged in questionable transactions, using Wickfield as a convenient scapegoat. The potential implications staggered her. If she revealed these findings, it could exonerate the father she'd never known, but it might also destroy Marcus's perception of his own father. That evening, Olivia stared at the city lights outside her window, conflicted yet resolute. She had taken her first substantial step toward unraveling the truth, but the journey ahead promised intensifying challenges. The weight of those hidden truths pressed on her, as did the realization that every discovery placed her deeper in Marcus Sterling's line of fire. Olivia's hands shook slightly as she clutched a paper in her room late the following evening. It was a page from the accordion file, a ledger detailing covert transfers Richard Sterling had made before the bankruptcy. She'd spent hours cross-referencing these figures with the public records Marcus provided for her organizational tasks. There was no doubt in her mind Richard's actions had pushed Sterling Corp to the brink, not Wickfield's. A knock at her door startled her. She hurriedly stuffed the paper under her pillow, then opened the door a crack. It was Harriet, looking anxious. "Marcus wants to see you in his study. He's in a mood." Fear fluttered in her chest as she recalled the newly unearthed evidence. She wondered if he suspected her inquiries. "Did he say what it's about?" Harriet shook her head. "No, but the staff heard him on the phone, and he sounded agitated." With reluctance, Olivia followed Harriet down the polished corridor to the study. She found Marcus pacing behind his desk, phone in hand, tie loosened as though he'd been pulling at it in frustration. Without preamble, he set the phone aside. "I just spoke with one of our major investors," he began, anger threading through his voice. "They've caught wind of rumors that the Wickfield brand might surface again to tarnish Sterling Corp. Some reporter tried poking around, implying we're rehashing old scandals. Care to explain?" Her heart drummed. Could the reporter be connected to Agnes or Charles Bowen? She kept her face composed. "I don't know anything about that." "What exactly did they tell you?" Marcus's eyes narrowed. "They claim there might be documents proving that Wickfield wasn't at fault. That would be quite the story, wouldn't it? Undermine my father's legacy? Make a mockery of all the suffering he endured? Olivia tried to keep her voice steady. Why assume it's related to me? He slammed his palm on the desk. Because you're the one supposedly tied to Wickfield. Are you conspiring with these reporters to smear my father's name right before our wedding? The accusation stung. Part of her wanted to throw the evidence in his face and shout, "Yes, I have proof your father orchestrated his own downfall." But she swallowed that impulse. Exhaling slowly, she met his glare. "I've done nothing to betray you. Why would I put myself in more danger by antagonizing you? Remember, you're the one holding all the cards." Marcus's gaze flickered with something akin to doubt. Then he barked, "Prove your loyalty. I want you to publicly denounce Wickfield as a swindler. At the next event, you'll make a statement supporting the Sterling family's account of what happened." A cold sweat broke over her skin. She realized this was the test. The moment he'd turn her into a mouthpiece to further vilify a man who might actually be her father. I can't do that," she said, her voice faltering. His face hardened. "You will, or I'll make sure this wedding never happens, and you'll have nothing. No job, no protection. Think carefully." He let the threat linger, then abruptly dismissed her. Olivia walked out on trembling legs, Harriet watching with worried eyes. Returning to her suite, she shut the door and pressed her forehead against the cool wood. If she denounced Wickfield, she'd be complicit in a lie that had already destroyed countless lives. If she refused, Marcus could ruin her, possibly even revoke any chance she had of uncovering more about her birth parents. She sat on her bed, phone in hand, and typed a hurried text to Agnes. "Marcus wants me to publicly condemn Wickfield. If I don't, he threatens to call off everything. Need guidance. Please help." Within minutes, her phone buzzed with a reply, "Don't act rashly. Stall if you can. I'll see what I can do to protect you legally." The message offered a shred of hope. Agnes was resourceful, but time was running short. The next event, an exclusive charity fashion show, was only 3 days away. Marcus would undoubtedly expect her to make a statement then. Fighting a wave of despair, Olivia told herself she hadn't come this far to give up. She still had the documents. She had Helena, Nicole, Martin, Harriet, and Agnes backing her in their various ways. If she could avoid openly siding with Marcus while collecting more evidence, perhaps she could orchestrate a final reckoning that showed the world the truth. Night descended over the mansion, each window a golden square of light in the quiet darkness. Olivia lay awake, her thoughts churning. She pictured Richard Sterling's portrait looming in the corridor, Marcus's haunted eyes, and her own reflection caught between them. Though uncertainty gnawed at her, the single truth she clung to was that she would not become a weapon of deceit. Better to risk everything than to perpetuate the very lie that chained them all. Morning light streamed into the library as Olivia flipped through a thick reference book on corporate law. Agnes had advised her to better understand the legal framework of corporate fraud cases, so she pored over every definition and precedent she could find. She was in the midst of reading about whistleblower protections when Helena Beaumont slipped into the room, shutting the door softly behind her. "Marcus is out inspecting the wedding venue," Helena said quietly, moving to stand beside Olivia at the long wooden table. "I have a few hours before he returns, so I thought I might help you. Nicole is busy with event planning, but she sends her support." Grateful for the unexpected companionship, Olivia closed the reference book and confessed, "He wants me to denounce Wickfield publicly, confirm his father's version of events, but I've discovered proof that Wickfield might have been innocent." Helena's brows lifted. "I suspected as much. You need to tread carefully. One wrong move, and Marcus will either clamp down on you or cut you loose entirely." "I know," Olivia took a shaky breath, "but these documents I found indicate Richard Sterling manipulated figures to protect himself. It's not just a matter of reputation. It's the foundation of everything Marcus believes in. Helena frowned sympathetically. If you tear down his father's image, you tear down the identity he's built around that legacy. Be prepared for a fierce reaction. At that, Olivia rose from her chair, restlessly pacing. I can't keep lying or stalling forever. The wedding is looming, and he expects me to read a statement in a few days at the charity event. Helena set a supportive hand on Olivia's arm. Then you need a strategy. Reveal the truth in a way that doesn't blindside Marcus completely. Or at least do it with solid backing so he can't just dismiss you as a liar. Can Agnes help with that? She's compiling evidence, talking to old contacts, but she cautions me not to confront Marcus until everything's airtight. Helena stepped forward, her voice low and intent. There's one angle you might consider. I've heard talk about an ex-board member, now living in seclusion up in Napa. He left after the bankruptcy and supposedly felt remorse. If anyone can confirm the authenticity of your documents, it might be him. Olivia's eyes widened. What's his name? Walter Goldman, Helena replied. He was Richard Sterling's friend, at least until they had a falling out right before the scandal broke. A quiet hush settled, punctuated by the faint ticking of an old grandfather clock in the corner. Olivia's mind raced with possibilities. If she could verify the documents with Walter Goldman, she might stand on firmer ground. She could then confront Marcus from a position of strength, perhaps persuading him to see reason instead of reflexively turning on her. Before they could discuss more, the sound of footsteps in the hallway made both women tense. Helena gave Olivia's hand a quick squeeze and slipped away, leaving the library as Harriet walked in. The housekeeper cast an anxious glance around the room. Marcus just called, Harriet informed Olivia, voice hushed. He's on his way back. He wants to finalize details for the charity event, particularly your speech. Olivia's stomach clenched. So soon? Harriet's gaze flicked to the heavy volume of corporate law on the table. If there's anything else you need to do, I suggest doing it quickly. He's in no mood for resistance. Once again alone, Olivia's mind whirled. She gathered the relevant pages from her hidden file and carefully slipped them into an envelope. She then placed the envelope in a hollowed-out section of the library's old card catalogue, a spot she'd discovered years ago while cleaning. It wasn't foolproof, but it beat keeping the incriminating evidence in plain sight. An hour later, Marcus returned. His face bore the strain of too many tasks, too much scrutiny. He stood in the library doorway, brow furrowing at the stack of books on the table. Still reading up on corporate finances? He asked, arms crossed. She inclined her head, trying to maintain a neutral tone. I want to be well informed. You've asked me to speak at the charity event, and I don't want to embarrass you. He stared at her with an unreadable expression. Make sure your remarks align with the official Sterling version of events. The press will be all over this. Summoning her composure, she nodded. Of course, Mr. Sterling. He hesitated, as though a different question hovered on his lips, but he merely sighed, turning away. After he left, Olivia released a shaky breath. Every day the tension tightened. She knew she was barreling toward a decisive moment when all facades would have to drop. Steeling herself, she quietly slipped out of the library to find Helena. If she could arrange a meeting with Walter Goldman before the charity event, perhaps she could secure the final puzzle piece that would force Marcus to confront the truth. She refused to live in the grip of lies, no matter how daunting the future might be once those lies were laid bare. 2 days later, the car glided up a winding, tree-lined driveway in Napa Valley, far from the urban sprawl of Los Angeles. Helena was behind the wheel, Olivia sat in the passenger seat, nerves thrumming. They'd told Marcus they were meeting a potential sponsor for the wedding's charity. In truth, they'd driven hours north to find Walter Goldman. A sprawling vineyard came into view. An old stone house, weathered by decades of California sun, stood at the end of the lane. They parked under a large oak tree. Olivia tugged at the collar of her light jacket, trying to calm her pulse. "Let's hope this is the place," she murmured. Helena offered an encouraging nod. "We'll be quick. Marcus thinks we'll be back tonight." They approached the front door, a heavy wooden slab with iron hinges. Olivia lifted a hand to knock. After a tense pause, it opened to reveal a lean, white-haired man with furrowed brows, recognition lit in Helena's eyes. "Mr. Goldman," she ventured. He regarded them warily. "I've nothing to say to reporters, if that's what you are." Helena shook her head. "We're not with the press. My name's Helena Beaumont, and this is Olivia Wilson. We have reason to believe you once served on the board at Sterling Corp." Walter's expression clouded. "Used to. Left a long time ago. Now I just grow grapes." He began to close the door, but Olivia caught it with a trembling hand. "Please, Mr. Goldman," she said. "This is about Jason Wickfield and Richard Sterling." His weathered features tightened. For a moment she thought he might slam the door, but something in his eyes flickered. At last, he stepped aside. "Fine. Come in." They followed him into a cozy living room. Shelves lined with books on viticulture, a brick fireplace, and an old sofa lent the space a rustic warmth. Walter gestured for them to sit, then remained standing, arms crossed. "Say your piece," he muttered. Olivia swallowed, pulling out a carefully folded page from Charles Bowen's file. "We discovered records indicating Richard Sterling might have orchestrated fraudulent deals to protect himself. Jason Wickfield took the fall. I'm trying to confirm if these documents are genuine." Walter eyed the page warily, then sighed. "I won't lie. Richard was a crafty son of a gun. He had powerful allies, and once he set his mind on pinning blame on Wickfield, no one dared speak up. I knew there was more to it, but I was part of the board. My loyalty was with the company. I kept silent." Helena leaned forward. "So these documents are real. Wickfield was innocent." Walter hesitated, face etched with guilt. "I never saw direct proof that Wickfield was squeaky clean. He made some questionable decisions too. But the bulk of wrongdoing, the real fraud, was Richard's doing. By the time I realized how far it went, it was too late. Richard threatened to ruin anyone who opposed him." Olivia's breath caught. "Did you ever meet Wickfield? Is there any chance he had a daughter?" Walter paused, shifting his weight. "I met him once. He mentioned a child, but he was vague. Seemed worried about her safety, said he feared the Sterlings would come after her if the feud got too ugly." Tears pricked Olivia's eyes. That had to be her. She nodded shakily. "Thank you. I believe I might be that daughter." Walter grimaced, guilt deepening the lines on his face. "If that's true, you have my apologies. We failed you. We failed Wickfield. Richard was unstoppable when it came to securing power." Helena placed a hand on Olivia's shoulder, anchoring her. "We need you to confirm these documents if the time comes. If we present them publicly, would you be willing to speak out?" Walter looked away, voice rough. "I'm an old man. I've spent years trying to bury that chapter of my life. But if it means setting things right, yes, I'll confirm what I know. If anyone can stop this madness, it might as well be me." His eyes met Olivia's, filled with weariness. "Just be careful. The Sterling name still carries weight." Relief mingled with apprehension in Olivia's chest. She thanked him, and after a few more questions, they left the vineyard as dusk settled. Driving back under the fiery orange sky, neither she nor Helena spoke much. The conversation with Walter had given them the final threads they needed to weave a coherent account of Richard Sterling's fraudulent actions. Yet, every mile closer to Beverly Hills increased Olivia's anxiety. In just a few days, she'd be expected to take a stand at the charity event and publicly denounce Wickfield. Now she possessed rock-solid evidence that Richard Sterling had orchestrated the downfall. How would Marcus react if she defied him, and, in doing so, shattered the carefully upheld myth of his father's righteousness? Helena eventually broke the silence. If you go through with this, prepare for backlash. Marcus might feel humiliated. He may retaliate. Olivia stared at the darkening horizon. I know. But if I stay silent, I'll be perpetuating a lie that ruined my father, that's still ruining me, and possibly Marcus too. I'd rather face the consequences than live in fear. They arrived in Beverly Hills late that night. As the mansion came into view, an imposing silhouette against the star-flecked sky, Olivia's pulse pounded. Stepping from the car, she felt the enormity of the conflict rushing to meet her. The trials ahead would be the fiercest yet, but she no longer felt trapped in the same way. Clutching her folder of newly validated documents, she felt a grim determination settle over her heart. She had come to the threshold of her greatest challenge. Whether the outcome proved victory or disaster, at least she would be fighting for truth, and perhaps, in the process, freeing Marcus Sterling from a lifetime of bitterness and lies. When the morning of the charity event arrived, the Sterling mansion felt charged with electric tension. Dozens of staff members hustled through the corridors, finalizing details for the evening's program. Outside, sleek vans delivered sound equipment and decorative structures, turning the estate's gardens into a stage for the grand gala. Olivia watched from an upstairs window, her heart pounding as she braced herself for what might be the most crucial day of her life. In her suite, Harriet fussed with a clothing rack laden with designer gowns, each more glamorous than the last. Marcus requested multiple options for you to try, Harriet said gently, her voice subdued. She glanced at Olivia with empathetic eyes. I can tell you're nervous. Olivia forced a small smile. That's putting it mildly. She crossed to the bed, where she had hidden a neatly packed folder beneath the sheets, her arsenal of documents proving Richard Sterling's complicity in the company's collapse. She'd also scribbled a rough outline of what she might say if the moment arose to reveal the truth. Any idea what you're going to do? Harriet asked quietly. Exhaling, Olivia closed her eyes. If Marcus insists I denounce Wickfield, I'll refuse and present this. She patted the concealed folder. I'm done lying. Harriet's brow creased. Marcus won't take that well. There are high-profile guests tonight, politicians, celebrities, media. If you challenge him in front of them, he might lash out in ways you can't predict. I know. Olivia's voice trembled slightly, but I can't let him use me any longer. I won't let him demean a man who was scapegoated for Richard Sterling's crimes, particularly if that man was my father. Just then, a knock sounded. Harriet hurried to open the door. Marcus stepped in, impeccably dressed in a black tuxedo. He spared a brief glance at the row of gowns before focusing on Olivia. You should choose something dignified for tonight, he said, his tone clipped. We'll be under a magnifying glass. The press is already camped outside, Olivia nodded, fighting the urge to blurt out all her grievances. She sensed he was equally on edge, his shoulders stiff, his eyes guarded. I'll be ready in time, she replied calmly. He cleared his throat. Good. The opening remarks begin at 7. I expect you to stand beside me. We'll greet our guests, and then you'll read your statement. His gaze swept across her, daring her to resist. With that, he left. Harriet waited until the door latched, then touched Olivia's arm. You've made up your mind. Yes, Olivia whispered. "I can't go on enabling him. At some point, he needs to face what his father did, or he'll never be free." An hour later, she stood in front of the mirror, wearing a midnight blue gown that cascaded elegantly to her feet. Harriet had arranged Olivia's hair in a sleek chignon, leaving a few tendrils to soften the look. The woman in the reflection appeared poised, an image at odds with the storm of dread roiling inside. As evening fell, the mansion buzzed with activity. Through the second-floor windows, Olivia watched black limousines and luxury cars file up the driveway. Cameramen and reporters lined the entrance, flashes going off every few seconds in the twilight. On the lawn, small chandeliers hung from trees, casting a glow over rows of white chairs arranged around a circular stage. By 6:30, Olivia stepped into the grand foyer to find Marcus exchanging greetings with various influential figures. The moment he spotted her, his expression hardened, though he extended his arm. She placed her hand on it, forcing an outward display of unity. They walked through the foyer and out to the garden, accompanied by the thunderous clicking of camera shutters. Nicole Rutherford waved discreetly from her spot near the stage, and Helena Beaumont offered a reassuring smile as Olivia passed. Agnes hovered by a media booth, giving Olivia the slightest nod. Having them here fortified her resolve, though her nerves felt razor-sharp. At precisely 7, an announcer requested all guests take their seats. Marcus escorted Olivia to the elevated platform, where a microphone stood waiting. The hush that settled was almost tangible. Slowly, Marcus began his speech, a polished overview of the charity's goals and the Sterling family's commitment to philanthropy. He spoke with the cultured confidence of a man used to commanding attention. Then he turned, inviting Olivia to step forward. She approached the microphone, knees trembling beneath her gown, the pages of Marcus's pre-approved statement clenched in her hand. The audience leaned in, eager for the fiancé's words. At first, she followed the script, reading the introduction Marcus had dictated, their devotion to the cause, their hope for unity. Then, her voice caught. She glanced up at the rows of expectant faces, business moguls, celebrities, reporters, and somewhere behind them, Harriet, Martin, Helena, Nicole, and Agnes. Her gaze locked on Marcus. A flicker of warning darkened his eyes. Summoning courage, Olivia exhaled and set aside the scripted pages. "I'm sorry," she said quietly into the microphone, "but I can't continue with these remarks. There's something far more important to address tonight." A collective murmur rippled through the crowd. Marcus's posture went rigid. In the silence that followed, Olivia's heart pounded like a drum. She knew there was no going back. One way or another, the truth was about to see the light. A stunned hush enveloped the garden. Olivia breathed in the cool evening air, forcing herself to steady her voice. "You've heard the Sterling family's side of the story for years, about how Jason Wickfield ruined them, but I've discovered evidence contradicting that narrative." Marcus's jaw clenched. He took a single step forward, as though he might yank her away from the microphone, but she lifted a hand, halting him. The cameras flashed like lightning in a thunderous silence. "In my possession," Olivia continued, voice low but unwavering, "are documents showing that Richard Sterling orchestrated fraudulent investments. These records indicate he funneled company funds into secret accounts and pinned the blame on Wickfield, who tried to expose the scheme. I believe," she paused, her throat tight, "I believe Wickfield was my father." A ripple of gasps and whispers flooded the audience. Some people actually stood from their seats, craning to get a better view. Marcus's face was a mask of fury and disbelief, but he seemed rooted to the spot. Olivia swallowed hard. "I don't share this to slander the Sterling name. I share it because the truth matters, even if it's painful. Revenge based on a lie won't bring closure. It only continues the cycle of destruction. A momentary hush gripped the gathering before a commotion erupted. Reporters shouted questions, cameras flashed again, and guests exchanged shocked whispers. Olivia stepped back, letting the avalanche of noise wash over her. Suddenly, Marcus seized her wrist, pulling her off to the side of the stage with enough force that she nearly stumbled. Under the glare of nearby spotlights, they stood face to face, tension crackling in the air. "How dare you?" he hissed, voice shaking with rage. "You took my father's name and dragged it through the dirt in front of everyone. Do you have any idea what you've just done?" She mustered all her composure. "I did what had to be done. I couldn't lie for you anymore. Your father isn't the martyr you think he is." His grip tightened, and for a moment Olivia thought he might lash out. But then Harriet and Agnes appeared at his side, and Helena, Nicole and Martin rushed toward them as well. Harriet placed a trembling hand on Marcus's arm. "Let her go," she whispered, her plea layered with both compassion and worry. Marcus let out a ragged breath, releasing Olivia. From the stage, an event coordinator tried to calm the crowd, to no avail. The chaotic swirl of voices and camera shutters escalated. Agnes stepped between Olivia and Marcus, addressing him in a firm, measured tone. "Let's take this away from prying eyes, for everyone's sake." Surrounded by a loose cluster of staff and friends, they maneuvered into a private corner of the garden behind a thick hedge of roses. Reporters were kept at bay, though that didn't stop them from snapping photos over the foliage. Marcus stood rigid, fists clenched. Olivia braced for the onslaught. "This is betrayal," he snarled at her. "After all I've done, what have you done besides force me into a marriage for your revenge?" she shot back, tears threatening to overwhelm her. "You can't pretend this was ever about love. You wanted to humiliate me, believing I was Wickfield's daughter. You never considered that maybe your father was at fault." He flinched, anger mingling with something else, hurt perhaps. The others watched, grimly silent. At last, Harriet stepped forward, voice trembling. "Marcus, if there's evidence, real evidence, maybe you owe it to yourself to look at it. Otherwise, you'll keep living in a lie." Marcus pressed a hand over his brow, as though warding off a migraine. He glared at Olivia. "Show me," he demanded, his tone slicing through the night air. Agnes guided them away from the noise, into a side corridor that led into the mansion. The small group found refuge in a private drawing room, its walls adorned with gold-framed paintings. Olivia retrieved the envelope of incriminating documents from where she'd concealed it beneath her shawl. Her hands shook as she extended it toward Marcus. He hesitated, eyes flickering with wariness. Slowly, he took the folder and began leafing through the pages. Each piece of evidence, bank statements, deposition transcripts, Charles Bowen's hidden ledger, chipped away at the bedrock of his certainty. His features shifted from fury to disbelief, then to a stunned, hollow look that made Olivia's heart ache despite everything. When he finally spoke, his voice was strained. You're saying my father orchestrated these false deals?" "Yes," Olivia whispered. "Walter Goldman confirmed it too. He was on the board." Silence thickened around them, interrupted only by the muffled hum of the gathering outside. Marcus lowered the folder, every trace of color drained from his face. "That can't be," he murmured, as though speaking to himself. "He wouldn't do that. He was trying to protect our family." Olivia's eyes welled with tears, sympathy mingled with sorrow. "I know it's hard to believe, but the numbers don't lie, and the people who knew him haven't forgotten." He shook his head, half in denial, half in anguish. For a moment, no one dared to speak. Whatever illusions had once fueled Marcus's hatred were now crumbling in the harsh light of facts. Outside, the cameras still flashed, and murmurs still reverberated through the garden. But in this small room, a searing truth had landed, irreparable and undeniable. The air in the drawing room felt stale with apprehension. Marcus stood frozen, eyes glued to the documents in his hands. Olivia watched an array of emotions flicker across his face: rage, shame, bewilderment. Around them, Helena, Nicole, Harriet, Agnes, and Martin lingered, offering silent support. At length, Marcus managed to speak. "All these years," his voice broke, and he turned away abruptly, pacing in front of a brocaded love seat. "I believed, no, I knew my father was wronged. Everything I did was to honor his memory, to avenge him." Olivia stepped forward tentatively. "Marcus, your father might have believed he was protecting you by covering up his failings, but it doesn't excuse the harm he caused. You've been fighting a battle that was built on a lie." He spun around, eyes red-rimmed. "And what about you?" he asked, voice trembling with a tangled mix of accusation and regret. "Were you always planning to destroy my father's reputation?" Her heart twisted. "I never wanted to destroy anyone. But I couldn't let you blackmail me into condemning Wickfield, especially if he was innocent. I had to speak out." Agnes cleared her throat gently, stepping into the conversation. "Marcus, if you look carefully at those statements, you'll see your father rerouted millions, implicating Wickfield at every step. Wickfield tried to warn him of potential collapse, and when it all imploded, Richard used Wickfield as a scapegoat." Marcus's gaze dropped to the folder, the weight of realization bearing down on him. "I sacrificed my entire life to uphold his name," he whispered. Harriet touched his shoulder. "He was still your father, Marcus. That doesn't change, but you need to let go of this resentment. It's poisoning you." Tears threatened to fall from Marcus's eyes, but he blinked them back, turning to Olivia. "What happens now? You humiliated me in front of everyone I know. The press, they're going to tear me apart." Olivia's voice was gentle. "I spoke the truth. If the press tears anyone apart, it's the man who orchestrated these lies. But I don't want to see you destroyed, Marcus. In fact, I hope this sets you free." He shook his head, seemingly at war with himself. The minutes ticked by in a taut silence, until finally Helena drew in a breath. "The gala is still happening outside. The media and guests are waiting for an explanation or some kind of statement." Marcus nodded, face grim. "I'll have to address them, but I can't face that crowd right now." He raked a hand through his hair, struggling to reorient himself. Agnes approached him calmly. "Step away for a moment. Gather yourself. The world can wait a few minutes longer for clarity." With that, Harriet quietly guided Marcus into an adjacent study, a smaller, dimly lit room. He sank onto a leather armchair, burying his face in his hands. Harriet paused at the threshold, then closed the door, leaving him alone with his thoughts. Outside, the muffled din of the crowd continued, punctuated by the occasional shout from a reporter trying to glean any detail. In the silence of the drawing room, Olivia trembled. She felt relieved. The truth was finally out. Yet guilt gnawed at her for the pain she'd inflicted on Marcus. Despite all he'd done, she couldn't ignore the anguish written across his features. Nicole placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You did what you had to do," Nicole murmured. "Maybe, in time, he'll see that." Helena nodded in agreement. Lies have a way of festering. This confrontation was inevitable. At least now, he can decide how to move forward, based on facts, not rage. Agnes smoothed her jacket, her eyes kind. "You should take a moment for yourself, Olivia. This is likely the most intense thing you've ever faced." Olivia exhaled shakily. "I'll be all right. I just need a minute." She slipped out of the room and down a quiet corridor, heart pounding in her ears. Stopping by a wide window, she gazed at the garden below. From her vantage point, she could see pockets of guests still milling about in confusion, unsure whether the event was over or if there would be some dramatic finale. The elegant decor, the soft glow of lanterns, the hushed lawn, it all looked surreal compared to the emotional storm inside. Pressing a hand to her chest, Olivia willed herself to breathe. She had spent so many years uncertain of her origins, longing for a connection to her birth father. Now, that yearning had led her to expose a family dynasty's darkest secret in the most public way possible. Yet the weight on her soul felt lighter. Even if the road ahead was chaotic, at least she stood on solid ground, no longer a pawn in Marcus Sterling's vendetta. When Marcus finally emerged from the adjacent study, he looked 10 years older, his shoulders slumped, eyes shadowed by the enormity of the revelations. Harriet had stayed with him for a while, and when they rejoined everyone, she gently released his arm, allowing him to stand on his own. "I owe the guests an explanation," he said quietly, as though each syllable cost him effort. The group collectively exhaled. Even Agnes, who had seen her share of legal battles, appeared relieved by his resolve. Marcus nodded at Olivia. "I need you beside me. I don't know how this will go, but I won't deny your truth." She swallowed the lump in her throat. "All right." Helena, Nicole, Harriet, Martin, and Agnes trailed behind them as they stepped into the corridor leading back outside. The sound of conversation rose to meet them, punctuated by the static crackle of reporters' microphones. Overhead, the evening sky was deepening to a star-speckled navy, and a gentle breeze rustled the decorative lights strung among the trees. A hush fell when Marcus and Olivia approached the stage again. The audience's murmurs stilled, all eyes locked on the couple. Marcus adjusted the microphone, clearing his throat. He began, his voice faltering momentarily. Glancing at Olivia, he drew a steadying breath. "Earlier tonight, you heard my fiancée speak about accusations against my late father, Richard Sterling. I'm sure many of you are confused and shocked. I am too." He paused, gaze drifting over the sea of faces. Some were sympathetic, others guarded, and more than a few openly skeptical. "For years," he continued, "I believed my father was the victim of betrayal by Jason Wickfield. But I've seen evidence tonight that indicates otherwise, evidence suggesting my father orchestrated a series of fraudulent moves that forced Wickfield to take the blame." A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Cameras flashed again, capturing every nuance of Marcus's expression. "I won't pretend I'm not devastated," he said, voice constricting with emotion. "The man I revered might have deceived me, and all of us. This changes everything I thought I knew." His eyes flicked to Olivia, who stood with her fingers laced tightly together. "But if it's the truth, then it must be acknowledged. Any legacy built on a lie can't stand." A few murmurs sounded from the corners of the audience. Someone in the press section shouted a question about legal ramifications. Another asked Olivia if she would press charges. She felt her cheeks burn, but she gripped the microphone, stepping closer. "I don't want vengeance," she said, voice trembling but resolute. "I only want to clear my father's name, assuming all this evidence holds. And I want Marcus to be free from a cycle of hatred that's caused so much pain." Marcus turned to her, his guarded expression softening. For a split second, empathy glimmered between them. Tethered by the shared shock of discovering the foundations of their enmity had been built on falsehood. Then he nodded once, returning his attention to the crowd. "As for the Sterling Corp," he said, shoulders squaring, "I intend to investigate further. If it turns out certain injustices were committed, I'll do what I can to make amends." The audience erupted into a din of overlapping voices. Camera crews attempted to push forward, swarming the stage in hopes of grabbing an exclusive. Harriet, Helena, and Nicole formed a kind of protective barrier around Olivia. Meanwhile, Marcus raised his hand, signaling the end of the public statement. "I realize many of you have questions," he said, "but we need time. Thank you for your patience and for supporting tonight's charitable cause. This event was about helping others, and I apologize for the drama overshadowing it. We'll release a formal statement once we have a clearer picture." The subdued applause that followed was more a gesture of respect for his honesty than celebration. As Marcus guided Olivia away, the crowd parted, and reporters hurled more queries at them. Security staff intervened, creating a path back toward the mansion. Flashbulbs continued to fire like mini lightning strikes behind them, illuminating the uncertain path ahead. Once indoors, the heavy doors closed with a resounding thud, muting the clamor of the outside world. Marcus pressed his back against the wall, breathing raggedly. Olivia hovered nearby, heart drumming in her ears. She sensed a profound shift, though she couldn't tell if it spelled reconciliation or deeper conflict. Agnes spoke up gently. "I can help manage the fallout, Marcus, legally and publicly, but you need to come to terms with this in your own way." He nodded numbly. "I have a lot to process." Harriet and Martin offered supportive nods, and Helena squeezed Olivia's hand. Despite the swirling chaos, Olivia felt a small rush of relief. Whatever happened next, at least the most damning lie was out in the open. The question that loomed now was how Marcus would handle the aftermath and what it meant for the wedding that was supposed to happen so soon. 2 days passed in a haze of damage control and intense scrutiny. The press coverage was relentless, broadcasting the drama of Marcus Sterling's public acknowledgement that his father might have orchestrated his own downfall. Analysts debated the authenticity of the documents, while social media buzzed with speculation about Olivia's role. Was she a gold digger, a genuine whistleblower, or a woman on a mission to clear her father's name? Amid the storm, Marcus retreated into his study, conferring with corporate lawyers and PR experts. Olivia caught only glimpses of him through the open doorway, his once confident posture weighed down by a new humility or perhaps despair. Harriet reported that he barely ate or slept, poring over financial records in search of clarity. On the eve of what was supposed to be their wedding day, Olivia found herself standing in the mansion's rose garden. In place of final decor preparations and celebratory champagne, a hush pervaded the property. The rows of white chairs, originally set for the ceremony, had been removed. Florists and caterers cancelled their deliveries, and the planned string quartet was told their services were no longer required. She trailed her hand lightly over the rose petals, recalling her earliest days here when she was simply the household staff. Never had she imagined her path leading to this dramatic intersection of truth and lies. Footsteps on the gravel made her turn. Marcus approached, jacket slung over one arm, shirt sleeves rolled to his elbows. Shadows rimmed his eyes, but his gaze was steady. "May I join you?" he asked quietly. She nodded, feeling a pang of sympathy for his haunted expression. Together, they strolled a slow path along the rose bushes, stopping at a small fountain that trickled softly. Neither spoke for a time. At last, Marcus cleared his throat. "I've spent the past 48 hours trying to verify or disprove your documents. Every path I follow confirms the story. Richard Sterling orchestrated the fraud, used Wickfield as cover, and manipulated me into believing a lie." Olivia's chest tightened. "I'm sorry you had to find out in such a public way, but I couldn't keep lying for him, or for you." He nodded grimly. "I see that now. And it was wrong of me to blackmail you into this engagement. I believed you were the enemy when, in truth..." He paused, struggling with the words. "In truth, I was fighting my own father's demons." She let out a shaky breath. What about the wedding? We both know it was never built on genuine love. Are you calling it off? His gaze swept over the garden, sadness etched into every line of his face. I think we must. It was conceived as a tool for revenge, not as a union of two willing hearts. And after what's happened, going through with it would be a mockery for both of us. Though the statement brought a certain relief, tears pricked Olivia's eyes. I agree. But what does that mean for my future here? Marcus's brow furrowed. You're free to leave if you wish, or you can stay if you still want to. I realize this mansion holds painful memories, but it's also been your home. The staff respects you, and I... He hesitated, a hint of vulnerability slipping through. I recognize I owe you a tremendous debt for exposing me to the truth. Part of me hopes we can rebuild something genuine, friendship or at least mutual respect, even if the marriage is no longer on the table. She studied him, seeing in his posture a man who had been hollowed out and was now searching for a path forward. I need time to think. We both do. She brushed a stray tear from her cheek, voice turning wistful. I never wanted to be your enemy, but I also can't pretend we can heal overnight. He nodded, hands fidgeting with the jacket he held. Understood. The fountain burbled behind them, filling the silence. Finally, he added, I still want to help rectify the damage done by my father, compensate those who were hurt, including Wickfield's estate, if any legal channel allows it. You can be part of that effort, if you choose. Her heart fluttered with the magnitude of his words. He was letting go of the vendetta that had consumed him, and though it didn't erase the pain he had inflicted, it signaled a chance for growth, perhaps even redemption. As dusk settled over the garden, they walked back toward the mansion. Agnes, Helena, and Nicole waited inside, their expressions wary. Marcus gave them a slight nod, indicating no confrontation had taken place. Harriet hovered in the background, relief in her eyes as she saw them conversing civilly. Later, alone in her suite, Olivia gazed at the empty spot where her wedding gown had once hung. She felt the stirrings of an odd mix, sadness for what could never be, relief that she wasn't entering a hollow marriage, and a cautious optimism that truth had paved the way for something more honest. Her father's name, once slandered, might yet be cleared. She could finally bury the ghost of uncertainty that had haunted her since childhood. Tomorrow would dawn on a world where she was no longer bound by illusions, and maybe, just maybe, that freedom would allow both her and Marcus to find new beginnings, ones forged not in bitterness, but in a hard-won sense of understanding. The sun rose over Beverly Hills on what was supposed to have been Olivia and Marcus's wedding day, casting a soft golden light on the Sterling mansion's now quiet grounds. Instead of bustling staff and last-minute preparations, an air of stillness hung over the property. A few reporters loitered outside the gates, hoping for follow-up statements, but even their presence felt less urgent than before. The story had been exposed: Richard Sterling's wrongdoing, Marcus's shattered beliefs, and a cancelled wedding. Olivia stood by her bedroom window, hugging herself against a strange mixture of relief and sorrow. Only days ago, she'd imagined this day might bring her final doom, a forced union built on resentment. Yet as she gazed out at the manicured lawns, she felt oddly weightless, as though freed from invisible chains. The knowledge that she had spoken the truth, that she had cleared her father's name, buoyed her. A gentle knock interrupted her thoughts. Harriet peeked in, hesitant but smiling kindly. "May I come in, dear?" "Of course." Olivia gestured to the small seating area near the window. Harriet closed the door behind her, carrying a tray of tea. She placed it on a side table. "I thought you might need something warm to start the day," Harriet murmured. "I know everything's different now." Olivia lowered herself onto the sofa. Different, yes, but maybe in a good way. She took the offered cup, inhaling the calming scent of chamomile. "How's Marcus? Have you seen him this morning?" Harriet sighed, setting her own teacup down. "He was awake at dawn, pacing the main hallway. I tried to coax him to eat breakfast, but he only managed coffee. It's like he doesn't know where to go from here." A flash of sympathy tugged at Olivia's heart. Marcus had staked his entire identity on avenging a father who turned out to be the true villain of the story. Now that the bedrock beneath him had crumbled, he was left in a no-man's land between guilt and newfound responsibility. "I've decided to stay on a little longer," Olivia said, surprising even herself with the declaration. "At least until I'm sure everything about Wickfield's exoneration is handled, and I don't want to leave Marcus in worse shape than I found him." Harriet's gaze softened. "You're a kind soul, Olivia. I believe staying might help both of you come to terms with what's happened." After a pause, she added quietly, "Whatever you decide afterward, just know this place won't be the same without you." Warmth spread through Olivia's chest at Harriet's words. She sipped her tea in a thoughtful silence, replaying the events of the past weeks. Betrayal, courage, revelations. She'd walked a tightrope between fear and determination, and despite all that had crumbled, she saw the possibility of rebuilding something new. Not long after Harriet left, Olivia ventured into the corridor. She found her way to the dining room, half expecting emptiness, but Marcus was there, staring at a half-eaten breakfast. He glanced up, weary circles under his eyes, but gave a small nod of acknowledgement. "May I join you?" she asked, voice gentle. He gestured to the seat across from him. "Sure." Sliding into the chair, she noticed how the polished surface of the table reflected their tense postures. She reached for a piece of toast, nibbling thoughtfully before speaking. "I know this was supposed to be our wedding day." Marcus grimaced. "Not exactly how I pictured it." "I'm sorry," Olivia said softly, surprising even herself with the sincerity in her voice. She wasn't apologizing for revealing the truth, only for the pain that truth had caused. "What do you plan to do now?" He pushed his plate aside. "I've spoken to the corporate lawyers. I'm planning an independent audit of the entire financial history from when my father was at the helm. I don't know where it'll lead, but it feels like the only honest thing to do." "That's a good start," she replied, recalling how many years he'd spent believing in a false narrative. "And about us." He lifted his gaze, eyes flicking over her face. "I won't force you to stay in this mansion or in my life if that's not what you want, but I'd appreciate your help. You have a unique insight into my father's wrongdoings now." Olivia felt a cautious warmth. "I'm willing to stay a bit longer. I want to see this through. Then, when it's settled, we can each decide the next step." He nodded, relief etched on his features. They sat there in heavy quiet, but no longer enemies locked in a power struggle. The tension that once riddled every conversation had softened into a mutual, if fragile, respect. A rustling sound at the door made them both turn. Martin, the chauffeur, popped his head in. "Excuse me, Mr. Sterling Miz. Wilson, there's a journalist from a reputable newspaper requesting an interview. Says he wants to run a fair piece on the situation, something more thoughtful than the tabloid gossip." Marcus exhaled slowly. "I'll handle it in a moment." After Martin left, he looked to Olivia. "Think you'd be willing to speak as well, if needed?" She hesitated, remembering the cameras and the barrage of questions. Still, if it helped clarify Wickfield's innocence and Marcus's new stance, maybe it was worth it. "Yes," she said, surprising herself with the steadiness in her voice. "I will." They rose from the table together, setting aside the remains of an abandoned breakfast. Despite the swirling uncertainty, A sense of calm took root. This morning could have been the start of a false marriage. Instead, it felt like the first day of an honest reckoning. And perhaps that was far more meaningful than any wedding could have been. 3 days passed swiftly as the dust began to settle around the Sterling mansion. Olivia spent most of her time poring over the old financial records alongside Marcus and his newly appointed auditors, professionals who were both discreet and thorough. The work was painstaking, each discovery another puzzle piece in the portrait of Richard Sterling's final years. Meanwhile, Helena Beaumont and Nicole Rutherford proved to be invaluable allies in the public sphere. They helped shape a narrative that balanced honesty with empathy, guiding the press towards seeing Marcus's transformation rather than vilifying him for the sins of his father. Agnes, the retired attorney, offered legal insights, making sure every statement made by Marcus or Olivia was precise and transparent. One afternoon, Olivia found herself alone in the mansion's sunroom, organizing spreadsheets with the skill of a seasoned archivist. She still wore the simple clothes of a house staff member, dark slacks, a casual blouse, though her role had shifted dramatically. No longer just the maid or the fiancée, she was a crucial part of the reconciliation between the Sterling name and the truth. A soft tap at the door broke her concentration. She looked up to see Harriet with a gentle smile. "Mind if I join you?" "Not at all," Olivia said, waving her in. The sunroom's glass walls let in brilliant daylight, illuminating Harriet's kindly face. Harriet sank into a wicker chair. "I never thought I'd see the day Marcus admitted his father's faults, let alone that you'd be the catalyst." Olivia set aside her laptop, a faint smile touching her lips. "It still feels surreal. Part of me keeps waiting for the old tension to resurface." "Marcus has changed," Harriet observed, folding her hands in her lap. "I don't mean he's suddenly a saint, but there's a weight lifted from him. The house is different too, less suffocating." Quietly, Olivia nodded. She sensed it too. The halls didn't echo with suppressed anger as they once had. The staff no longer tiptoed around Marcus's simmering temper. Even the opulent rooms felt more welcoming, warmed by the possibility of openness rather than shadowed by old grudges. "What do you plan to do after all this?" Harriet asked gently. "When the audits are done and the press frenzy settles?" Olivia inhaled, gazing at the neat rows of orchids near the sunlit windows. "I'm still deciding. Part of me wants to move on, build a new life away from Beverly Hills, maybe pursue a career that makes use of these organizational skills I've picked up. Another part worries about leaving Marcus alone with the fallout." Harriet smiled kindly. "You're a free woman now, dear. Don't feel guilty about living your life. If you choose to stay in touch with Marcus, that's your call, not a forced duty." A swirl of conflicting emotions rose in Olivia's chest. She'd come to this mansion seeking only a stable job and ended up unearthing her own parentage and toppling a decades-long feud. The ties that bound her here felt both burdensome and strangely precious. "I guess I'll know when the time comes," she murmured. Later that day, an unexpected visitor arrived, Mrs. Hall, the etiquette instructor who had once coached Olivia to navigate high society. Olivia spotted her stepping out of a taxi, carefully adjusting her prim hat. Curious, she went to greet the older woman at the door. "Olivia," Mrs. Hall said, a touch of warmth in her usually formal tone, "I heard about everything that's happened. Quite the stir you've caused." Heat rose in Olivia's cheeks. "I never intended to cause a scandal, but it all needed to come out." Mrs. Hall nodded, her features softening. "I actually came to congratulate you, not just for exposing the truth, but for holding your head high through it all. You've displayed more grace under pressure than many who've been groomed for this world their entire lives." Surprised by the compliment, Olivia thanked her. Mrs. Hall pressed an envelope into her hand. "This is a small token of my appreciation," she said. "Inside, you'll find a letter of recommendation, should you ever want to enter any formal, public-facing role. I doubt you'll have trouble now, given your name is on every headline, but just in case." Tears prickled Olivia's eyes. For so long, she'd been an outsider, the maid who didn't belong. Now, an esteemed etiquette instructor was endorsing her character and capabilities. "Thank you," she whispered. Before departing, Mrs. Hall cast a glance around the foyer. "And what of Mr. Sterling?" Olivia glanced toward the study where Marcus worked, deep in conversation with auditors. "He's adjusting, trying to mend the damage. I think he'll be all right in time." Mrs. Hall's eyes twinkled with a rare hint of fondness. "Then perhaps some good has come of all this drama. I wish you well, my dear." Watching Mrs. Hall leave, Olivia clutched the envelope with a delicate blend of pride and humility. The sun dipped lower outside, bathing the mansion in an amber glow. Each passing day felt like a gentle unveiling of a new life. For Olivia, for Marcus, and for everyone who had lived under the mansion's once oppressive aura. She strolled to the study door, peeking in. Marcus looked up from a ledger, his expression weary but not hostile. A faint smile touched his lips, barely there, but genuine. Olivia smiled back. A sense of calm settled in her heart. Whatever came next, she was no longer bound by fear or uncertainty. She had the freedom to choose her path and the knowledge that, even amid the chaos, hope and healing could flourish in the unlikeliest of places. On a crisp morning a week later, Olivia found herself standing on the steps of a local community center in downtown Los Angeles. She had volunteered to speak to a small group of older women, part of a program called Second Chances, about her journey from foster care to the maid's quarters of a billionaire's mansion, and ultimately to challenging a corrupt legacy. When the program coordinator introduced her, the dozen women, all above 60, turned welcoming smiles toward her. She sensed warmth and curiosity in their eyes. Some had experienced hardships not unlike her own: displacement, financial struggles, family betrayals. Clearing her throat, Olivia began, "I'm not here to talk about money or power. I'm here to talk about finding strength when you feel powerless. A few months ago, I was just a maid in a mansion, with no idea of my real heritage." She recounted the highlights of her story, careful not to sensationalize. She focused on the moral choices she'd faced, her decision to stand up for the truth despite the personal risk. A few women dabbed at their eyes when Olivia mentioned her father's name and the papers exonerating him. By the time she finished, a low hum of empathy and encouragement filled the small auditorium. An older woman, Sarah, raised her hand. "Dear, how did you find the courage to speak against someone so powerful? Weren't you afraid you'd lose everything?" Olivia nodded, remembering the visceral fear that had clenched her stomach on many nights. "I was terrified," she admitted, "but I realized staying silent would cost me my self-respect, and that was something I couldn't afford to lose. In the end, knowing I spoke for a father who never got the chance gave me the courage." Another woman, Evelyn, who wore a bright scarf and had kind wrinkles at the corners of her eyes, leaned forward. "Do you regret exposing the family secrets? It must have caused so much heartache." Olivia took a moment to choose her words. The truth can be painful, but it also sets people free. Yes, it hurt Marcus Sterling and destroyed the illusions he grew up with. But it gave him a chance to build an honest future. It gave me a chance to reclaim my father's legacy, and it showed everyone that no matter how wealthy or influential you are, lies eventually catch up. When she finished speaking, applause resonated in the room. Several women approached her afterward, sharing their own tales of resilience and moral dilemmas. As she listened, Olivia felt a surge of connection. Her experiences weren't isolated. Countless others, especially older women in this group, had fought their own battles against injustice and silent suffering. Before leaving, the program coordinator pressed a pamphlet into Olivia's hand. "We hold these talks once a month. We'd be thrilled if you continued to share your story or helped other women find their voices." Tears threatened to spill as Olivia promised to consider it. The sense of purpose she gleaned from inspiring these women was unlike anything she had felt before. Returning to the Sterling mansion that afternoon, she crossed paths with Martin, who was polishing the town car in the driveway. "You're back," he said with a warm smile. "How did it go?" She recounted the highlights, her excitement evident. Martin's eyes lit with pride. "Sounds like you found something worth pursuing." "I think so," Olivia said softly. "Being there, seeing how my story could help someone else, it felt important." Martin patted the hood of the car, then looked at her more seriously. "And how are things with Marcus?" She paused, reflecting. "We're learning to talk without hostility. Sometimes we even manage to laugh about small things around the house. He's deep into the audit, but he's also taking steps to create a compensation fund for those hurt by Sterling Corp's past malfeasance." Martin nodded approvingly. "That's a big step. A lot of powerful people never find the humility to make amends." Olivia smiled, feeling a mix of relief and cautious optimism. "He's come a long way. So have I." Later, as she walked through the mansion's ornate foyer, she noticed how the space no longer felt oppressive. The memories of tense standoffs and overheard threats had given way to a subtle peace. She made her way to the library, reflecting on how Agnes, Helena, and Nicole had each provided crucial support. The three of them had returned to their own busy lives, but they kept in regular contact, offering help whenever she or Marcus needed it. Standing amidst the towering shelves, Olivia ran her fingers along the spines of classics she used to dust and tidy. She had come full circle, once a timid outsider, now someone with a voice others wanted to hear. A letter of recommendation from Mrs. Hall sat in her pocket, and a wealth of new possibilities stretched before her. For a moment, she closed her eyes, envisioning her father, Jason Wickfield, free of false blame, his name no longer used as a curse. She liked to think he would be proud of what she had done, that he would see how far she had journeyed to protect a legacy she'd barely known was hers. A gentle twilight settled over the Sterling mansion. The pastel hues of a California sunset painted the horizon, and the evening air carried a hint of jasmine from the gardens. Olivia stood on the mansion's back terrace, leaning against the balustrade and gazing at the sweeping view of the city lights beyond. A calm sense of finality coursed through her, as if she were standing at the edge of one chapter, ready to turn the page to whatever came next. Soft footsteps approached. She turned to see Marcus, hands in his pockets, his expression earnest, but no longer haunted. They hadn't spoken much that day. He'd been busy meeting with auditors and lawyers, yet she could sense a shift in him. The turbulence that once defined his presence had eased. "Do you mind if I join you?" he asked quietly. She shook her head. "Not at all. It's a beautiful evening." He stepped beside her, their arms nearly touching on the balustrade. They watched the sky transition from orange to deep purple, the clouds tinted with the glow of the setting sun. For a moment, neither spoke. Finally, Marcus cleared his throat. "The auditors finished the preliminary report. It's conclusive. My father orchestrated everything. The next steps involve official statements, possible legal settlements. I'm prepared to do whatever it takes." Olivia studied his profile. finding new lines of maturity etched into it. I'm glad to hear it. People deserve closure. My father's memory deserves closure, he nodded. I know. And about the compensation fund. I'm creating one for Wickfield's estate, or any rightful heirs, though it's complicated. His gaze flicked to her. That includes you, if you want it. She felt a pang, shaking her head gently. I appreciate the offer, but I'm not looking for a payout. What matters is clearing my father's name. I want to earn my own way, now that I'm free to do so. His lips curved in a faint smile. That's what I expected you to say. They shared a quiet laugh, tinged with shared history. Then Marcus's expression grew somber again. I know you're probably leaving soon. Have you decided where you'll go? She inhaled, letting the cool evening air fill her lungs. I'm thinking of getting a modest place downtown, not far from the community center. I might keep giving those talks or maybe work for a non-profit. I discovered I like helping people find their own courage. He turned to face her more fully. You've helped me find mine in a way. I owe you so much more than an apology, Olivia. I hope you can forgive me. Her eyes glistened. I do, but forgiveness doesn't erase what happened. It just means I'm willing to move forward without resentment. You have a chance to do a lot of good now. He nodded, swallowing hard. Then, in a gesture that felt both surprising and natural, he extended his hand. She placed hers in his, and for a moment they simply stood there, looking at one another. No pretense, no revenge plot, no forced obligations. Just two people who had shared a harrowing journey of lies, secrets, and finally, truth. His voice wavered slightly. I'm not asking you to stay here or even to be in a relationship with me. We've both been through enough manipulation to last a lifetime. But maybe, in time, we can see if there's something real between us, something not built on hatred or a false premise. A softness welled in her chest. I'd like that, she said, meeting his gaze with sincere warmth. No pressure, no obligations, just possibilities. They released hands, each lingering in a hush that felt more intimate than any shared vow could have been. The city lights flickered below, and the last streaks of sunset faded into a velvety night sky. A small swirl of wind rustled the rose bushes near the terrace stairs, carrying the sweet fragrance of blossoms. Olivia's heart felt lighter than it had in years. She could almost envision her younger self, lost in the foster care system, yearning for security, watching from afar, amazed at how far she'd come. Behind them, Harriet, Martin, and the other staff continued the evening chores. The mansion now a place of open doors rather than locked secrets. No longer was it a fortress of resentment. It had become a setting where truth, however painful, had led to renewal. As they stood in companionable silence, Olivia reflected on how her once fractured life had found purpose in unveiling the past. In doing so, she had transformed not only Marcus's future, but her own. There would be challenges ahead, public repercussions, legal complexities, but the shackles of vengeance and shame had been broken. After a while, Marcus quietly said, I think I'll walk the garden before turning in. Care to join me? Olivia smiled, a gentle glow touching her features. Yes, I'd like that. Side by side, they descended the terrace stairs into the moonlit garden. Each step carried a sense of resolution, of leaving behind the hurt and entering a realm of hope. The path ahead wasn't guaranteed or simple, but at least it was truly theirs to choose. And as they wandered among the softly illuminated blooms, Olivia realized that, in every sense that mattered, she had come home, to herself, to her history, and to a future shaped by hard-won honesty and the stirring possibility of genuine love. I hope you enjoyed today's story. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this. Leave a like and comment below what you thought of the story. See you in the next video.